welcome to Tales in the Dark. I know many of you enjoy relaxing with these videos, so I recommend turning down the volume until my voice is barely audible. It'll make the experience even more soothing. Before you close your eyes, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy listening. Story 1. Every night I heard footsteps, pacing, dragging something heavy across the floor. But when I asked the landlord, he just blinked. "You're on the top floor," he said. "No one's above you." The air smelled faintly of dust and something earthy like damp concrete. That night the noise started again, and this time it sounded like someone was knocking from the ceiling. At first I tried to rationalize it. Old buildings settle. Pipes contract, animals find their way into walls, but the pattern was too deliberate, a slow, methodical movement from one end of my bedroom to the other, always starting when darkness fell deepest. I pressed my palm against the ceiling, feeling for vibrations. The plaster felt cool, almost damp, despite the summer heat that permeated everything else in my apartment. As my hand rested there, I felt it a subtle thrumming, like a heartbeat transmitted through concrete. "Hello," I called upward, feeling foolish even as the word left my mouth. "Is someone there?" The footsteps stopped, silence stretched across my apartment, so complete I could hear blood rushing in my ears. Then came 3 distinct knocks directly above my head, as if responding to my question. I pulled my hand away as though burned. Sleep evaded me that night, my mind racing with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. The next morning I convinced myself it had been a dream, a product of stress and an overactive imagination. But doubt lingered, clinging to me like the musty scent that now seemed to follow me everywhere. I decided to document everything. I set my phone to record audio while I slept. I took photos of my ceiling, searching for cracks or signs of water damage that might explain the dampness I'd felt. I even drew a floor plan of my apartment, marking where the sounds were most frequent. The recordings captured it all: footsteps, dragging sounds, and something else. Something that made my blood run cold when I played it back, whispering. Faint but unmistakable, words spoken in a language I couldn't identify, the cadence rising and falling like waves. I showed the building plans to a maintenance worker who had come to fix my leaking faucet. "Is there access to the roof from inside?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He shook his head. "Only from the fire escape outside." "Why, having problems?" "Just curious," I said, but my eyes kept drifting upward. That evening I climbed the fire escape. The metal rattled beneath my feet as I ascended past my own windows to the roof. The setting sun cast long shadows across the tarred surface. No footprints disturbed the small pebbles scattered across it. No entrance existed, no door, no hatch, nothing that would allow someone to move between the roof and my ceiling. I knelt down, pressing my ear to the surface. Silence, then a soft scratching sound like nails against the underside of the roof, directly beneath where I crouched. I jerked back, heart pounding. The air smelled wrong up here, that same earthy dampness, stronger now, with an undertone of something metallic, something like blood. Back in my apartment, I noticed a change. The ceiling had developed a discoloration, a darkening in the corner where the sounds were most frequent. I touched it, finding the plaster soft, yielding slightly beneath my fingertips. Something dark and viscous clung to my skin when I pulled away. I called the landlord. "I need you to check my ceiling," I insisted. "Something's leaking." He arrived wearing the same bland expression he always wore. "Water damage?" he asked, glancing upward. "I don't know what it is," I admitted. but something's wrong. He stood on a chair, pressed his hand against the discolored spot, and frowned. Feels normal to me, dry. He gave me a patronizing look. Maybe you're just anxious about living alone. Some people imagine things in new places. But I hadn't imagined the substance on my fingers, now dried to a rusty brown. I hadn't imagined the whispers on my recordings or the response to my question. That night I set up a ladder beneath the stain. It had grown, spreading outward like a blood stain on fabric. Armed with a kitchen knife and flashlight, I decided to cut into the ceiling, just a small hole to see what lay beyond. The plaster was softer than expected, almost moist. It gave way easily under my blade. As I carved a hole the size of my fist, something dripped onto my cheek, warm and thick. I shined my light upward. The beam revealed no pipes, no insulation, no structural beams. Instead, there was a cavity extending upward into darkness. The walls of this space pulsed, glistening with moisture, lined with something that looked disturbingly like tissue. And there were eyes, dozens of them, blinking at the sudden intrusion of light. I fell from the ladder, scrambling backward across my floor. Above me, something shifted, moving toward the hole I'd created. A finger long, pale, and jointed in too many places emerged, probing the air of my apartment. I fled, grabbed my phone, my wallet, and ran into the hallway, pounding on neighbors' doors. Most remained closed. One opened, revealing an elderly woman who stared at me with milky eyes. "You hear them too?" she asked before I could speak. The footsteps from upstairs. My voice sounded strange, too high. She shook her head. "Not footsteps. They're trying to come through. They've been trying for years." She looked past me toward my door. "You shouldn't have made a hole." I turned. Dark liquid seeped beneath my door into the hallway carpet. The smell hit me, then copper and rot, and that earthiness, stronger now. "What is it?" I whispered. "The building stands on old ground," she said. "Ground that remembers." I couldn't return to my apartment. Instead, I spent the night in my car, watching my windows for movement. Nothing visible happened, but I knew that whatever had been confined to the space above my ceiling was now in my home. I called the police the next morning. 2 officers accompanied me back to my apartment. Everything looked normal. The hole I'd cut was gone, the ceiling pristine, without even a hint of the stain that had been spreading the night before. "Are you sure you didn't dream this?" one officer asked, not unkindly. I showed them my recordings, but the whispers were gone, replaced by static. The photos of the stain showed only smooth, white plaster. My drawings and notes remained, but seemed childish now, the paranoid scribblings of an unstable mind. After they left, I stood in the center of my living room, listening. Silence, no footsteps, no dragging sounds. I approached the spot where I'd cut the hole. The ceiling looked untouched, but when I reached up, my fingers encountered a subtle difference in texture, a circular area that felt smoother than the surrounding plaster, like scar tissue. That night, for the first time since moving in, I heard nothing from above. The silence should have been comforting, but instead, it filled me with dread. Something had changed, something fundamental. I woke to warmth on my face, droplets falling from above. In the dim glow of streetlights filtering through my blinds, I saw that the stain had returned, larger now, covering most of my bedroom ceiling. As I watched, it pulsed like a membrane expanding and contracting with breath. I didn't run this time. Some part of me understood that running was pointless now. Instead, I spoke to it. "What do you want?" The ceiling rippled in response. A seam appeared along the stain, parting like lips. More of the viscous fluid dripped down, splattering my face, my sheets. It whispered my name, not the name on my lace or mail, but a different name, one I'd never heard but instantly recognized as mine, somehow more true than any name I'd used before. I felt a strange calm wash over me. The fear remained, but beneath it was something else: recognition. The emptiness I'd carried inside me all my life suddenly made sense. I'd always felt incomplete, like a puzzle missing pieces. Now I understood why. I stood on my bed, reaching upward. The seam widened, revealing darkness beyond. Not a cavity in the building, but something deeper, vaster. The smell that had seemed so wrong before now felt familiar, welcoming. My fingers touched the edge of the opening. The tissue there was warm, pulsing. It parted further at my touch, inviting. "I understand now," I whispered. The thing above me, the thing that had perhaps always been above me, wherever I lived, made a sound of satisfaction. Not footsteps or dragging, but the sound of something vast settling into place. I live differently now. My neighbors don't see me much. The landlord stopped responding to complaints about strange noises from my apartment. The elderly woman nods when we pass in the hallway, a look of knowing sympathy in her clouded eyes. At night, I lie awake, listening to the sounds above me, but they're no longer above, not really. They're inside, moving through me, rearranging. I've stopped recording them. Some things aren't meant to be documented. Sometimes I catch my reflection in mirrors or windows, and something about the proportions seems wrong. My limbs too long, joints bending at strange angles. My smile stretches wider than before. I still have questions, of course, but now I know that answers will come in whispers and movements from places that shouldn't exist but somehow do. Places between walls, between floors, between moments. The apartment above me was never rented, but it was never empty either. And neither, I'm beginning to realize, was I. Story 2, I kept it in a display case, something I inherited, something I never liked. Every time I entered the room, its head was angled toward me. I started testing it, leaving it faced away, marking the glass. But by morning, the eyes were back on me. The air near it always smelled faintly of mothballs and rosewater. Last night, I found the case open. My grandmother never mentioned this doll in her will. It simply arrived with her other possessions, nestled in tissue paper inside a wooden crate. Porcelain skin, rosy cheeks, black button eyes that caught the light in a way that made them seem wet. Victorian-style dress with faded lace trim. The kind of antique collectors would fight over at auctions. I placed it in the glass cabinet in my study, tucked away in the corner where guests wouldn't immediately notice it. Something about those eyes made my skin crawl, but family heirlooms carry obligations, even ones nobody asked for. The first week passed without incident. Then I noticed something odd while working late one evening. A faint scratching sound coming from the cabinet. Mice, I thought. Old houses make strange noises. But when I approached the display case, the sound stopped. The doll sat motionless, those black button eyes reflecting my face in miniature twin pools. "You're being ridiculous," I whispered to myself, but I turned the doll to face the wall anyway. When I returned the next morning, it faced me again. I convinced myself I'd forgotten, that I'd turned back around after checking for mice, so I tried again. This time I took a photo with my phone, documenting the doll's position. Its back to me, head angled down, tiny porcelain hands clasped in prayer. The next morning it faced me again. The photo remained on my phone, proving I hadn't imagined it. I picked up the case, examining it from all angles. No hidden mechanisms, no tricks, just an ordinary glass display cabinet and an ordinary if unsettling antique doll. I decided to mark the glass, a small piece of clear tape on the inside of the case, aligned precisely with the doll's nose. If it moved, I would know. That night the scratching returned, louder now, more insistent. I ignored it, pulling my blankets tighter around my shoulders. In the morning, the doll faced me again, the tape now misaligned. I began documenting everything, photos from multiple angles, video recordings that captured nothing but stillness, audio recordings that picked up only the ambient sounds of the house settling, and yet each morning the doll had shifted, always facing me, always watching. The smell of mothballs and rosewater grew stronger. At first, it lingered only near the cabinet, but soon it filled the entire study. Then it began seeping under the door into the hallway, the kitchen, my bedroom. I found myself waking in the night, the sickly sweet scent filling my nostrils. I called my cousin, the only other surviving relative who might know something about the doll. Grandmother had many antiques, she said. I never paid much attention to them. This one's unusual, I insisted. Victorian era, maybe earlier, porcelain with black button eyes. A pause on the line. Button eyes, are you sure? Yes, black buttons, why? I remember grandmother's dolls. They all had painted eyes. Blue mostly. I don't recall any with button eyes. That night I dreamed of the doll. In my dream it sat on my chest, its weight surprisingly heavy for something so small. It leaned forward, those black button eyes inches from mine. Its porcelain lips cracked as they spread into a smile. I woke gasping, the smell of mothballs and rosewater overwhelming. My bedroom door stood open, though I distinctly remembered closing it. The hallway stretched dark before me, leading to the study where the doll waited. I began sleeping with my bedroom door locked. The scratching grew more persistent. Now it happened during daylight hours too. Sometimes a gentle tapping, sometimes a frantic scraping, as if the doll were trying to claw its way out of the glass case. I considered destroying it, burning it perhaps, but something stopped me each time I approached with that intent. Those black button eyes seemed to grow wider, more aware. The smell would intensify until my head swam. Instead, I covered the case with a heavy cloth. If I couldn't see it, perhaps it couldn't see me. This worked for exactly one night. The following morning, I found the cloth neatly folded beside the case, the doll facing me once again. I took more extreme measures. I moved the cabinet to the basement, behind stacks of storage boxes. I nailed the basement door shut. That night, the scratching came from inside my walls. My sleep deteriorated, my appetite vanished. Friends commented on my appearance, the dark circles under my eyes, the way I jumped at small noises. I stopped inviting people over. Then came the night I found the case open. The doll wasn't inside. I searched everywhere, crawling on hands and knees, checking under furniture, behind curtains. The smell of mothballs and rosewater followed me from room to room, sometimes stronger, sometimes fainter, as if leading me in a twisted game of hide and seek. I found nothing. Exhausted, I collapsed into bed without locking my door. What was the point now? The doll was free. As sleep took me, I realized the scratching had stopped for the first time in weeks. I dreamed again. This time I was inside the glass case looking out. My limbs felt stiff, immobile. Outside the glass, a giant eye watched me, blinked, moved closer. When I woke, the doll sat at the foot of my bed, black button eyes gleaming in the darkness. Between us lay a small silver key I'd never seen before. "What do you want?" I whispered. Silence, the black buttons reflected moonlight in twin pinpricks. I reached for the key, half expecting the doll to move, to grab my wrist. It remained still. The key was cold to the touch, ornately carved with patterns that reminded me of my grandmother's handwriting. On instinct, I turned it over. Tiny words were etched into the metal, "For the trunk in the attic." "I don't have an attic," I said aloud. But I did have a crawl space, a small door in the ceiling of my closet that I'd never explored, assuming it held nothing but insulation and dust. The doll remained motionless as I fetched a stepladder. The crawlspace door opened with a creak, revealing darkness beyond. The smell of mothballs and rosewater poured down like water. I found the trunk pushed against the far wall, small, wooden, bound with tarnished metal. The key fit perfectly. Inside lay a journal, my grandmother's handwriting filling its pages, and photographs, dozens of them yellowed with age, family portraits spanning generations. In each one the same doll appeared, sitting on laps, perched on shelves, clutched in children's arms. But in the earliest photos, it didn't have button eyes. Its eyes were glass, painted, just as my cousin remembered. The journal told the rest, my grandmother's descriptions of the doll changing over time, how the glass eyes cracked were replaced with buttons, how the doll began to move on its own, how eventually she realized what was happening. The doll wasn't possessed, it was a vessel. The final entry read, "It wants to be passed down, it needs to be inherited willingly. I've held it at bay for decades, but I'm tired now. Forgive me." I closed the journal, descended the ladder. The doll still sat on my bed, watching. "You want to be passed down," I said, "but there's no one after me. I'm the end of the line." The scratching began again, from inside the doll this time, a sound like fingernails against porcelain. I picked up the doll. It felt heavier than before, warmer. The black button eyes seemed to pulse. "I accept the inheritance," I whispered. The scratching stopped. The smell of mothballs and rosewater intensified, then faded completely. I placed the doll back in its case, closed and locked it. Since then, it hasn't moved again. It doesn't need to. We understand each other now. Sometimes, catching my reflection in a window or mirror, I notice my eyes look different, darker, almost like buttons. I've started making a list of distant relatives, second cousins, forgotten branches of the family tree. Someone who might accept an unexpected inheritance someday. Someone who won't mind the smell of mothballs and rosewater. Story 3. I was peeling the wallpaper to repaint when I saw it faint letters scrawled in charcoal, repeating the same sentence across the wall, "Don't look behind you." The handwriting changed halfway down, grew shakier. The air smelled like mildew and something sour. I turned around, heart pounding. Nothing was there, but the paint scraper was gone. My project had started innocently enough. The old house needed updating, and the bedroom walls were first on my list. The previous owner left behind faded floral wallpaper, yellowed at the edges, peeling in spots like a skin ready to shed. I thought nothing of it at first, just another home renovation chore. The first few strips came off easily, revealing patches of plaster and older paint beneath. I hummed while working, pleased with the progress, until my fingers brushed against something that felt different. A roughness under the paper, a deliberate texture. As I peeled back more carefully, The message revealed itself dark, urgent strokes of charcoal against the bare wall. "Don't look behind you." Once, twice, the same phrase written over and over in neat rows. Then the handwriting deteriorated, becoming frantic, pressed harder into the plaster as if the writer had grown desperate. My skin prickled, the bedroom suddenly felt colder, though no window was open. I ran my fingers over the words, half expecting them to smudge under my touch, but they remained fixed, embedded in the wall like fossils. I stepped back, calling out to check if anyone else had entered the house. Silence answered me. The paint scraper I'd placed on the floor beside me had vanished. I searched under the drop cloth, behind furniture, convinced I had misplaced it. It was nowhere to be found. That night I slept in another room, unable to face the exposed message. Dreams came in fragments, walls breathing in and out, charcoal strokes rearranging themselves when I blinked. I woke gasping for air, my sheets damp with sweat. Morning light offered no comfort. I returned to the bedroom armed with my phone to document the strange writing. But as I framed the shot, I noticed something new. Between the rows of warnings, fainter marks appeared, sketches perhaps, or symbols I couldn't decipher. I hadn't seen them before. I took several photos, then zoomed in on the screen. The images showed nothing but blank wall where I knew the writing existed. I looked up from my phone, and there it was, clear as day on the actual wall. I touched it again, felt the grit of charcoal, but my phone captured only empty plaster. Determined to prove what I was seeing, I retrieved a notebook and began sketching the pattern of the writing, copying the phrases exactly as they appeared. As I worked, the air grew heavy with that same sour smell, stronger now, like vinegar mixed with something metallic. A soft scraping sound came from behind me. I refused to turn, remembering the warning. Instead, I watched the shadows on the wall in front of me, looking for movement, any indication of what might be there. The shadows remained still, yet the scraping continued, a gentle rhythm like fingernails dragging across plaster. My documenting became obsessive. I filled pages with copies of the handwriting, noting changes I observed from day to day, because it did change. The writing shifted subtly when I wasn't looking, sentences extending further down the wall, the shakier handwriting gradually becoming the dominant style. I covered the exposed wall with a sheet when I wasn't studying it. The scraper never reappeared, so I bought another, determined to continue removing the wallpaper to see how far the message extended. Each new section revealed more of the same warning, but now interspersed with what looked like tallies, 4 vertical lines crossed by a 5th, repeated in groups across the wall. I found myself avoiding mirrors and reflective surfaces, afraid of what might be visible behind me. Sleep became elusive. When exhaustion finally pulled me under, I dreamed of pressing my ear against the wall, hearing whispers from inside, a voice counting steadily upward. During my waking hours, I noticed other changes in the house. Objects moved between rooms. The temperature fluctuated wildly in certain spots. Most disturbing were the new sounds, a persistent knocking from inside the walls that followed no pattern I could discern. I started recording these knocks, playing them back at different speeds, convinced they contained a message. Slowed down, they sounded almost like words, though I could never quite make them out. The recordings developed strange distortions, buzzing interference that formed patterns like speech. One morning I woke to find all my documentation gone. The notebook with my careful copies, my phone with the photos that showed nothing, the new audio recorder, all vanished without trace. When I rushed to the bedroom, the sheet covering the wall had been removed, neatly folded on the floor. The exposed wall was now completely blank. I touched the surface, feeling only smooth plaster where the charcoal warnings had been. My heart raced as I pressed harder, scraping with my fingernails, certain the message was still there, perhaps just covered with a thin layer of something new. The plaster flaked under my desperate scratching, revealing not charcoal but a deeper darkness that seemed to absorb the light around it. It wasn't writing anymore, but a void opening in my wall, widening with each piece of plaster I removed. Cool air flowed from the opening, carrying whispers too faint to understand. I pressed my ear against it, straining to hear. The whispers grew clearer, my own voice, reading the warning aloud over and over. Don't look behind you. I jerked away from the wall, heart thundering in my chest. The darkness pulsed slightly, like something breathing. It pulled at me, a gentle suction I could feel against my skin. The sour smell returned, overwhelming now, making my eyes water. I backed away slowly, refusing to turn around despite the growing sensation of breath on my neck. Each backward step felt heavier than the last, as if I were moving through water. When my back pressed against the opposite wall, I realized my mistake. It wasn't a wall at all, but something soft that gave way slightly, something warm. A hand closed around my wrist. The grip was gentle, but impossible to break. With my free hand, I reached up to touch what held me, feeling rough paper where skin should be. The room spun, walls shifting like panels in a rotating box. When everything stilled, I stood facing a new wall, completely covered in fresh wallpaper, the same faded floral pattern I had been removing. My paint scraper sat on the floor before me, exactly where I'd left it at the beginning. I live with the wallpaper now, never removing it, never touching it. Sometimes, late at night, I hear scratching from inside the walls, a sound like charcoal on plaster, forming words I cannot see but somehow understand. And sometimes, when I pass the bedroom mirror, I catch a glimpse of someone standing behind me, hands stained black, watching me with my own eyes, waiting for me to turn around. I never do. Story 4, it hadn't rained and there were no burn sites nearby. But as I stepped into my backyard, I saw a thin path of gray ash twisting between the trees. The smell was unmistakable, smoke, burned hair, something metallic. I followed it for a few steps, then I noticed the footprints in the ash, barefoot, human, facing my house. I knelt down, my fingers hovering over the ash without touching it. The powder looked ordinary enough, gray, fine, almost silvery in the dappled light filtering through the trees, but something felt wrong about it. The trail was too precise, too intentional. A thin, winding line that cut through my property and disappeared into the dense woodland beyond. The footprints were small, perhaps belonging to a child or a petite woman. They emerged from the forest, each step perfectly placed within the ashen path, and stopped at the edge of my mowed lawn, as if whoever or whatever had been walking there had simply vanished at the boundary of my property. My phone camera captured nothing unusual, just gray powder against dark soil, but the images appeared slightly blurred despite my steady hand. I ran my finger through the ash and brought it to my nose. The metallic scent intensified, mixed with something else now, a sweetness that reminded me of burning sugar. I wiped my finger on my jeans, suddenly uncomfortable with the residue on my skin. That night I dreamed of walking along a path of ash. In the dream, my feet burned with every step, yet I couldn't stop moving forward. I woke to the smell of smoke in my bedroom, so strong that I leapt out of bed and checked every room for signs of fire. Nothing, just the lingering scent that seemed to follow me now, clinging to my clothes and hair. The next morning, the trail had widened by several inches. The footprints remained, but now they were deeper, as if pressed with greater weight, still facing my house, still stopping at the edge of my lawn. I took more photos, collected samples in a plastic bag, even measured the width and depth of the ash with a ruler. The act of documenting made me feel better, more in control. Perhaps there was a rational explanation. Perhaps kids from the neighborhood were playing an elaborate prank. When I returned from work that evening, I found gray smudges on my back doorstep. Handprints, small ones the size that might match the footprints. They were smeared across the glass of my door, 5 perfect little fingers dragging downward. I stood frozen on my patio, groceries forgotten in my hands, staring at those ashen streaks. The door remained locked. Nothing inside appeared disturbed. I cleaned the glass with trembling hands, scrubbing until my knuckles turned white. The smell wouldn't leave smoke and metal and sweet decay. It filled my kitchen, my living room, my entire house. I opened every window despite the autumn chill, lit scented candles, sprayed air freshener. Nothing helped. That night I sat by my bedroom window watching the woods. No movement caught my eye, no strange lights, no figures emerging from between the trees, just darkness and silence. Yet every few minutes I would catch a whiff of that burning scent, stronger then fainter, as if someone were walking past my window carrying smoldering clothes. Sleep came in fragments, broken by the sound of something scratching at my walls. Not inside the house, outside, moving around the perimeter. Gentle at first, then more insistent. Scrape, scrape, scrape. When dawn broke, I found more handprints, now on every window of my house. And the ash trail had expanded again, no longer a path, but a wide swath leading from the forest to my back door. I called in sick to work, spent the morning photographing everything, writing detailed notes in a journal, even drawing diagrams of how the ash pattern had changed. The academic in me thought perhaps I could make sense of this if I just collected enough data. The part of me that hadn't slept properly in days knew better. My neighbor noticed me pacing in my yard and wandered over. Could he see it? The ash, the footprints, the handprints. He looked at me strangely when I pointed them out. Said he didn't see anything but dirt and maybe some pollen. Asked if I was feeling all right. Said I looked pale, exhausted. Recommended I see a doctor. I nodded and thanked him, but as he walked away, I noticed gray smudges on the back of his jacket where I'd touched him. He couldn't see them, but they were there. That evening, the scratching returned, earlier than before. The sun hadn't even set when it started gentle at first, then growing more desperate. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I sat in my living room, lights off, watching the windows. The handprints appeared one by one, materializing against the glass as if pressed from outside, though I saw no one there. Small fingers, small palms, pressing, sliding, desperate to get in. My phone rang, unknown number. I answered to the sound of static, and beneath it, what might have been breathing, or perhaps the crackle of a distant fire. I whispered hello, and the static paused for just a moment before intensifying. Then faintly, I heard a child's voice or something approximating a child's voice. It spoke a single word that I couldn't quite make out, distorted by interference and distance. I hung up. My phone screen was smeared with ash, though I hadn't touched anything but the clean plastic case. The journal I'd been keeping to document the phenomenon had new entries now. Pages of writing in my handwriting, but not my words. Nonsense phrases, repeating patterns, drawings of what looked like a small figure standing among trees. The ink smelled of metal and smoke when I touched it. That night I barricaded myself in my bedroom, pushed a dresser against the door, closed and locked the windows, drew the curtains tight. The scratching continued, moving methodically around the house, pausing at each window, each door, then silence. I must have fallen asleep despite my terror because I woke to my alarm. Sunlight streamed through the curtains. The house was quiet. Had I dreamed it all? I pushed aside the dresser, opened my bedroom door. Gray ash covered every surface of my home. The floors, the furniture, the walls all dusted with fine powder that smelled of burning hair and sweet metal. And footprints small, barefoot walked through it all, up the stairs into my room, stopping at my bedside, facing me. I ran, grabbing only my keys, my phone, and the ash-stained journal. I fled to my car. The trail now extended from the woods, across my yard into my house, and stopped at my vehicle. As I pulled away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. There, standing at the edge of the trees, was a small figure, gray and featureless except for the impression of two dark eyes. I drove without destination, stopping only when my tank neared empty. A small roadside motel became my refuge, paid for in cash. I showered 3 times but couldn't wash away the smell of smoke that seemed embedded in my skin now. The journal sat on the bedside table, and though I hadn't opened it since leaving my house, I noticed new pages had been filled. My phone pinged with notifications. Photo after photo, taken by my device without my knowledge, showing the inside of my empty house. In each successive image, the small gray handprints climbed higher up the walls, reached further across the ceilings. The final photo showed my bedroom, the ash now concentrated entirely on my bed, formed into the outline of a small body. That night alone in the motel room, I heard it again. Scrape, 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 moving around the perimeter of my room. I turned on every light, checked the locks twice, 3 times. The sound continued, patient and persistent. The smell of smoke grew stronger. I opened the curtains to see if someone was outside. The window reflected only my face, pale and drawn with exhaustion. But as I watched, a layer of ash seemed to form over the reflection, reshaping my features into something smaller, something with dark, hollow eyes. Behind me, the journal fell open. New words appeared on the page, forming letter by letter, though no one held the pen. I found you, it wrote. I always find you. The ash from the window reflection began to drift into the room, floating in the still air, gathering into a small pile on the carpet. Footprints formed, step by step, crossing the room toward me. I don't run anymore, there's no point. The ash follows, leaving its trail wherever I go. The scratching continues each night, growing closer, more insistent. The voice on the phone calls daily, growing clearer, more recognizable. Sometimes I catch glimpses of the figure in reflections, in the corner of my eye, small, gray, with eyes that seem to absorb light rather than reflect it. Always watching, always following. The journal now has only one repeated phrase, written in ash-smeared ink: take me home. I think I know what it wants, who it is, what happened in those woods so long ago that I've tried to forget. The fire, the screams, the promises made and broken. The trail of ash isn't leading away from the woods. It's leading me back. Story 5, I dropped a novel behind my shelf, reached in to grab it and froze. In the dark space between the boards, there was something else, a slit, wide and trembling, hidden in shadow. A mouth. The breath that came from it was warm and damp, smelling of ink and mildew. As I backed away, I heard a voice whisper, one more story. The words lingered in the air like frost on a window. I blinked, certain my mind was playing tricks. Writers often imagine things, it comes with the territory. Yet that voice felt real, carrying weight and substance beyond imagination. I retreated to my desk, the familiar creak of my chair offering temporary comfort. The shelf stood against the wall, innocent and unchanged, housing my collection of beloved books gathered over years. Nothing appeared different, except now I felt watched. That night sleep evaded me. My bedroom walls seemed to contract and expand with each breath I took. The darkness felt heavier, more substantial than usual. When dawn finally broke, I convinced myself the incident had been a hallucination born from exhaustion and an overactive imagination. Until I found the book. It sat neatly centered on my desk, a slim volume bound in leather so dark it absorbed light. I never purchased this book. I never placed it there. The cover bore no title, only a raised pattern resembling lips pressed against the surface. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, blank pages greeted me, pristine and waiting, except for the first page, which carried a single sentence in elegant script: "Feed me your words." I slammed the book shut. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead as I carried the volume to the shelf, shoving it into a gap between two encyclopedias. Out of sight, out of mind. Yet that night, the book returned to my desk. I found myself drawn to it, my fingertips tracing the raised pattern on its cover. Against better judgment, I opened it again and picked up a pen. The words flowed easily, a short story about a walker in the woods who discovers a hidden path. When I finished writing, fatigue crashed over me. I fell asleep at my desk and dreamed of walking that same path, feeling branches scrape against my skin with unusual sharpness. Morning arrived with a strange discovery. The story I'd written had vanished from the pages, replaced by emptiness. And on my arms, faint scratches mapped the exact journey described in my story. Curiosity battled fear as I approached my bookshelf. Carefully, I removed the books from the middle shelf and peered into the gap behind them. The wall seemed normal at first glance, peeling paint and dust, until I noticed movement. A narrow opening widened slightly, revealing pink, glistening tissue within. The mouth exhaled softly, its breath carrying the scent of my cologne that I described the walker wearing in my story. "Another," it whispered, "sweeter this time." I recoiled, stacking books back hastily, creating a barrier between myself and that impossible thing. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I paced my small apartment, checking windows and doors, though I knew this threat wasn't coming from outside. The mysterious book reappeared on my pillow that night. Sleep-deprived and desperate to understand, I wrote again, a romantic tale involving a candlelit dinner and a bitter argument ending in reconciliation. The words flowed more smoothly than any writing I'd done before, vivid and emotionally raw. Upon completion, I forced myself to stay awake, watching the ink. It didn't disappear immediately. Instead, it seemed to sink deeper into the page, the paper absorbing every word like parched soil drinks rain. When exhaustion finally claimed me, my dreams filled with passionate arguments and tearful embraces with a faceless partner who smelled of vanilla and salt scents I'd described in my story. I woke tasting wine I'd never drunk and feeling phantom lips against mine. The book lay open beside me, pages blank once more, hungry for fresh stories. Days blurred together as a pattern emerged. I wrote, the book consumed, and fragments of my fiction manifested in my reality, subtle at first, then with increasing substance. A character's distinctive ring appearing on my nightstand, mud from a fictional countryside staining my shoes, a song from my story playing from my silent phone. My reflection changed too, skin paler, eyes darker, as though parts of me were being consumed along with my words. Weight dropped from my frame. Friends called with concern, but I made excuses not to see them. I attempted to destroy the book's scissors, fire, water. Nothing marked its surface. The leather remained unblemished, mocking my efforts. One night I refused to write. The consequences were immediate. Every book on my shelves began weeping dark fluid from between their pages, the substance smelling of copper and rot. My television switched on by itself, displaying only static that gradually formed the shape of a mouth, silently opening and closing. The whispers started then, coming from every dark corner. Feed me, feed me, feed me. I broke, grabbing the book and writing frantically a horror story about a creature that lived between walls and fed on fear. It was vindictive, spiteful writing, meant to disturb rather than entertain. That night, scratching noises filled my apartment walls. Something moved within them, circling my bedroom. Occasionally, claw marks appeared on the inside of my wallpaper, pushing outward as if something sought escape. I didn't sleep, how could I? The entity behind my shelf was growing stronger, feeding on my creativity, blurring the boundary between fiction and reality. My next story was calculated a tale about a parasite that required specific conditions to survive, that would wither and die if exposed to certain elements. I theorized that perhaps I could write a weakness into existence, just as I'd accidentally written strength into this thing. The gambit failed. The book rejected my story, the words sliding off the page like oil on water, forming a puddle of ink on my desk that shaped itself into a mouth and whispered, "Clever writer, but I exist outside your rules now." Desperation drove me to my shelf again. I cleared it completely, exposing the wall behind. The mouth had grown, now the size of my fist, lips cracked and dry. It spoke directly to me now, its voice stronger. "Your words give me form," it said. "Your imagination gives me life. Soon I won't need the book to bridge our worlds." I covered the mouth with a painting, sealed the edges with tape. Behind it, muffled laughter echoed. The book appeared beneath my pillow again, its cover warm to the touch, almost pulsing like a heart. New text had appeared on the first page, final chapter. Understanding crystallized with terrible clarity. This entity, whatever it was, had been using my stories to construct itself, piece by piece. Each tale contributed elements of reality it could manipulate and claim. My creativity was building a bridge, allowing it passage into my world. I made my decision, one last story my masterpiece. I wrote about a writer who discovers a parasitic entity feeding on creativity. In my story, the writer realizes that the entity cannot exist without continuous nourishment, that it would dissolve if its host refused to create. Then I wrote myself walking away forever. I packed a bag that night, placed the book on my desk, and left my apartment without looking back. The whispers followed me down the hallway, growing fainter with each step. Distance hasn't completely severed the connection. Sometimes I find blank pages turning up in my notebooks. My new bathroom mirror occasionally fogs with what looks like lip prints, but these manifestations grow weaker, like echoes fading in a long corridor. I no longer write fiction. My creativity remains locked away, the price of freedom. But during sleepless nights, I still wonder if the entity fed on my stories to build itself, whose story created the mouth behind my shelf in the first place. What writer breathed life into that hungry gap between worlds? And somewhere is another author unknowingly crafting my tale, feeding my existence word by word into the waiting mouth of reality. I've considered burning every book I own, severing all ties to the written word. Yet something stops me, the fear that destroying stories might somehow set free what lurks between their pages. So I keep my books closed and my imagination shuttered, living in the concrete world of facts and figures. But sometimes when the night grows still, I hear distant whispers, one more story. And I wonder if silence is truly enough to starve what waits in the dark spaces between words. Story 6, we were planning a small dinner, just close friends. I glanced at the printed guest list and saw my name, then saw it again, same spelling, same last name. Probably a mistake, they said, but the second entry had a note beside it, confirmed. The air in the room felt heavier after that, like someone else had already arrived. My fingers traced over the duplicate entry, feeling the slight indentation of ink on paper. Something about seeing my identity doubled made my skin prickle. A cool draft whispered across my neck, despite all windows being firmly shut. "When did you make this list?" I asked my friend, trying to keep my voice casual. She glanced up from arranging flowers, her movements stilling for just a moment. "Yesterday evening. Why? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing," I lied, folding the paper and slipping it into my pocket. The weight of it felt wrong somehow, heavier than paper should be. The preparations continued. I helped arrange silverware, counting each piece twice to be certain. 6 places set at the table, though only 5 names on the list, counting my single identity only once. The extra setting glared at me, pristine and waiting. A knock at the door made me jump. The first guests had arrived, bearing wine and laughter. I watched them enter, studied their faces, looking for any sign they might notice something amiss. They greeted me warmly, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that their eyes lingered a moment too long, as though expecting someone else behind me. During appetizers, my phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, just 2 words, "I'm coming." The letters blurred momentarily as I stared, rearranging themselves before settling back into place. When I showed it to my friend, she frowned. "There's nothing there," she said. "Your screen is blank." I excused myself to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. The mirror reflected my familiar features, yet something subtle seemed wrong, perhaps the slight delay in my reflection's movements, barely perceptible but undeniably there. I leaned closer and whispered, "Who are you?" My reflection mouthed the words in perfect sync, yet I could swear I heard my question echoed back with a different inflection. Returning to the table, I noticed a wine glass had moved from where I'd placed it earlier. Not dramatically, just rotated slightly, with a smudge on the rim suggesting lips had touched it. My lips, presumably, though I hadn't taken a sip. The conversation flowed around me, but I found myself distracted by small inconsistencies. Friends referring to comments I hadn't made, inside jokes I didn't remember sharing. One friend asked about a dream I'd told them about last week, a conversation I had no memory of. "You said you kept seeing yourself standing at the foot of your bed," she insisted. "You were quite disturbed by it." The food tasted like ash in my mouth. My appetite vanished as I became increasingly aware of a presence in the room, something occupying the negative spaces, hiding in peripheral vision. Midway through dinner, the doorbell rang. Everyone paused, exchanging glances. "Are we expecting someone else?" asked one of the guests. My friend checked her watch. "Everyone's here already." I rose to answer it, legs unsteady. The short walk to the front door felt interminable, stretching beyond normal physics. My hand hovered over the doorknob, suddenly reluctant to turn it. No one was there when I opened it, just darkness and the sound of wind through leaves. As I began to close the door, something caught my eye, a folded piece of paper on the welcome mat. I picked it up with trembling fingers. Inside was a guest list, identical to the one in my pocket, except my name appeared only once. Instead, another name occupied the sixth spot, unfamiliar, yet carrying a strange resonance, like a word forgotten, but once intimately known. Back at the table, I found my seat occupied. Not by a person, the chair remained empty, but by something that made the air warp slightly, like heat rising from summer pavement. My wineglass now stood full, lipstick on its rim matching my exact shade. "Is everything okay?" someone asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think someone else is here," I whispered. The room fell silent, not just conversation, everything. The background hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, even the sound of breathing seemed to vanish for 3 perfect heartbeats. "What do you mean?" asked my friend, her voice unnaturally clear in the silence. I pulled out the guest list from my pocket. My duplicate entry was gone, just my name written once in unfamiliar handwriting, not the list I had taken earlier. "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. "My mistake." Dinner resumed, but a new tension filled the room. Glances exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. Conversations that seemed coded, meaningful. In the kitchen, helping with dessert, I noticed a small notebook open on the counter. My friend's handwriting, a list of names the dinner guests. My name appeared once with a question mark beside it. Beneath it, scrawled hastily, "Which one is coming?" My hand knocked against a water glass, sending it crashing to the floor. The shards reflected the kitchen lights like stars. As I knelt to help clean up, I noticed something in one of the larger fragments, not my reflection, but my profile, as though I were standing beside myself. I turned sharply, but saw nothing. "Do you ever feel like you're not alone even when you are?" I asked, keeping my voice low. My friend's hands paused in their work. "Why do you ask?" "I'm just curious." She studied me for a long moment. "Which one of you wants to know?" The words hit me like ice water. "What do you mean?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Nothing, just a joke." When we returned with dessert, I noticed my napkin had been refolded. My water glass moved slightly to the left. Small disturbances, as though someone had briefly occupied my space. The conversation turned to identity, to memories, to the nature of self. Not by my prompting, but naturally, inexorably, as though following a script. "Do you believe a person could be in 2 places at once?" asked one friend, looking directly at me. "Quantum physics suggests it's possible," replied another. "The observer effect. Reality exists in multiple states until measured." "I've been having strange dreams," I admitted. "I see myself standing at the foot of my bed, watching myself sleep." A heavy silence fell. "You told us that last week," someone said quietly. But I knew I hadn't. Yet the memory suddenly surfaced, fractured, dreamlike, but there. Me at this same table, describing those exact dreams, the sensation of doubled existence. After dessert, I excused myself again. In the bathroom, I avoided the mirror, instead opening the medicine cabinet. Inside, nestled among toiletries, sat a small notebook identical to the one in the kitchen. Opening it revealed page after page of my handwriting, observations, questions, timestamps, a documented investigation of unexplained phenomena. My investigation, recorded in my distinctive script, yet entirely unknown to me. The final entry dated today. It's getting stronger, coming through. I need to warn myself. The sound of the door opening behind me made me spin around. Nobody there. but the mirror now showed an empty bathroom, my reflection gone entirely. Back in the dining room, conversation halted abruptly as I entered. A glass sat in my place, lipstick on the rim. My jacket, which I'd draped over the chair, now wore a slight indentation, as though someone had been sitting there moments before. "Did someone take my seat?" I asked, forcing lightness into my voice. My friend tilted her head. "What do you mean? You've been here the whole time. You just went to the bathroom." No, the protest died on my lips as I noticed a napkin clutched in my hand. Not the cloth napkin from dinner, but a paper towel from the bathroom, covered in writing. My writing, fresh ink still glistening slightly. "I'm sorry I had to use your dinner party. The boundary between us is thinnest here, with all these witnesses to anchor reality. Listen carefully, we're not two different people. We're the same person splintered across parallel realities. Each time we cross paths, the split widens. Each recognition makes it worse. Stop looking for me. Stop acknowledging me. It only pulls me through more." The room spun slightly. My friends' concerned faces blurred. Someone called my name, but it sounded wrong somehow, like they weren't quite sure which version of me they were addressing. "I need some air," I managed, stumbling toward the front door. Outside, the night air felt thick, resistant, like moving through water. The stars above seemed to pulse and shift, constellations rearranging themselves as I watched. I leaned against a tree, its bark unnaturally warm beneath my fingers. The sound of the door opening behind me sent a chill down my spine. Footsteps approached my footsteps, with their distinctive slight drag on the left side from an old injury. I didn't turn around. "Don't look at me," my voice said from behind me. "It makes it worse." "How is this possible?" I whispered to the darkness. A fracture in reality started small, getting bigger. My voice sounded strained, as though speaking required immense effort, like a crack in a mirror spreading. "Can it be fixed? One of us needs to stop existing." A cold certainty settled in my stomach. Which one? A hand touched my shoulder, my hand, yet not mine. The sensation sent electric prickles across my skin. Either, both, neither. The boundary is almost gone now. I finally turned. The sight was both exactly what I expected and utterly horrifying myself, but wrong in subtle ways. Eyes slightly too wide, smile slightly too fixed, skin that seemed to ripple slightly, like water disturbed by wind. "The guest list," I said, understanding dawning. "You were trying to warn me." My duplicate nodded. "Every time we occupy the same space, it gets worse. The universe doesn't have room for two of the same consciousness." "What happens next?" "Merger or obliteration. Physics doesn't care which." From the house came the sound of breaking glass, followed by alarmed voices. The boundary weakening, reality protesting our dual existence. "Why here, why now?" I asked. The dinner party created a focal point. All those people who know us both know us as one person. Their perception helps stabilize the convergence. My duplicate's edges seemed to blur, features becoming less distinct. "It's starting," they said, voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere. The air between us thickened, distorted. I felt myself being pulled forward, not physically but essentially, as though my very being was magnetized toward my other self. "Will it hurt?" I asked, feeling my own boundaries beginning to dissolve. "I don't know," my voice answered from both my mouth and theirs simultaneously. Our hands reached for each other, four hands that were really two, belonging to one fragmented identity seeking wholeness. At the point where our fingers should have touched, the boundary between us simply ceased to exist. There was no flash of light, no dramatic transformation, just a quiet realignment like puzzle pieces clicking into place. Memories doubled, then merged, two sets of experiences of the same dinner party folding together like interlaced fingers. Standing alone now in the darkness, I felt the weight of dual existence settling into singular form. From the house, I could hear my friends calling my name, uncertain, concerned. I checked the pocket of my jacket. The guest list was there, a single sheet of paper. My name appeared once, neatly printed. But beside it, visible only when the paper caught the light at a certain angle, a ghostly second entry remained, a palimpsest of what had been, or what might yet be again. I returned to the dinner party, to concerned faces and questions I couldn't entirely answer. The night continued, normal by all appearances. Yet in reflective surfaces, windows, silverware, wine glasses, I occasionally caught my face watching me from impossible angles, wearing expressions I wasn't making. The boundary had been restored, but not perfectly, not permanently. Next time I would be ready. Next time I would understand what needed to be done. I made a mental note to decline all future dinner invitations. Story 7, the appliance had been acting up, so I pulled it forward, and behind it was a doorway, narrow, cracked, leading to steep stone stairs that curved down into darkness. The air was cool and dry, filled with the scent of cold stone and iron. I turned on my flashlight. The steps were worn in the center, used recently. My kitchen had always been small, unremarkable white walls, laminate countertops, the occasional dripping faucet, nothing special. Nothing that would suggest something waited behind my refrigerator all this time. I ran my fingers along the doorframe. The wood felt oddly warm despite the cool air flowing from within, almost like skin with a pulse beneath it. I should have called someone. I should have pushed the refrigerator back and pretended I never saw it. Instead, I took a step forward. The first stair creaked under my weight, not the dull groan of old wood, but a higher pitch, almost like a whimper. My flashlight beam trembled against the rough stone walls, casting shadows that seemed to move independently of my shaking hand. I took another step down, and another. The door behind me closed with a soft click. I spun around, heart hammering against my ribs, but there was no door anymore, just a solid wall of stone, cold and indifferent to my sudden panic. My breath fogged in front of my face, though the kitchen had been warm just moments before. "Hello," my voice sounded wrong, muffled, as if the air itself was thicker here. No echo returned. The darkness seemed to swallow my words whole. I continued downward because I had no choice. The stairs spiraled tighter with each turn, and I dragged my hand along the wall to steady myself. The stone felt damp now, with patches of something soft and velvet-like growing in the crevices. Each time my fingers brushed against it, the texture shifted slightly, recoiling from my touch. The smell changed too. Iron gave way to something earthy and organic. Mushrooms, perhaps, decay, certainly. I switched my phone to record audio, narrating everything I saw in a whisper, though I couldn't say why I felt the need to document this. Maybe to convince myself later that I hadn't imagined it all. The stairs keep going down. The walls are changing texture. I count 37 steps so far. The air tastes metallic. There's a sound below. I paused my recording. A sound drifted up from below, not quite footsteps, not quite breathing. a rhythmic scraping like fingernails against stone. I almost turned back then, almost pressed myself against that sealed entrance in desperate hope. But something pulled me forward, a curiosity that felt both my own and strangely foreign, as if planted in my mind. The staircase finally opened into a small, circular chamber. My flashlight beam caught dust motes floating in the air, swirling in patterns too deliberate to be random, almost like writing, symbols I could almost recognize before they dissolved back into chaos. In the center of the chamber stood a wooden table, ancient and stained dark with age. On it sat a single object, a small hand mirror, its silver frame tarnished black, its glass cloudy with age. I approached slowly, my footsteps unnaturally loud against the stone floor. When I picked up the mirror, it felt heavier than it should have, dense as lead. I turned it over in my hands, noting strange markings etched into the back swirls and lines that seemed to move when viewed from the corner of my eye. I raised it to my face. The reflection wasn't mine. The face staring back had my features, but wrong eyes too wide, skin too pale, mouth stretched in a smile I wasn't making. I dropped the mirror with a cry, but it didn't break when it hit the floor. It landed face up, and the reflection continued to stare at the ceiling, blinking slowly. I backed away, bumping into the table, which scraped against the floor with that same sound I'd heard earlier, fingernails on stone. The noise triggered something, a memory that wasn't mine, darkness, dampness, waiting, a hunger for light and warmth that had festered for so long in this place beneath places. Around me, the walls began to sweat. Droplets of clear liquid beaded on the stone and ran down in rivulets, pooling on the floor. Where the liquid touched my shoes, the material began to soften and dissolve. I ran back to the stairs, taking them two at a time despite the dizzying spiral. The walls pulsed now, contracting and expanding like a throat swallowing. The patches of velvet-like growth reached out as I passed, brushing against my clothes, leaving behind dark stains that spread like ink in water. My recording continued, capturing my ragged breathing, my footsteps, and when I played it back later, whispers that I hadn't heard in the moment. Words in a language I didn't know but somehow understood. Stay, become, replace. I reached the top of the stairs, hands scrabbling against solid stone where the door should have been. The wall felt different now, softer, warmer. It yielded slightly to my touch, like pressing against a membrane. I pushed harder, desperate, and suddenly broke through. I fell forward onto my kitchen floor, gasping, covered in sweat and dark stains. Behind me, the refrigerator stood exactly where it had always been, humming contentedly as if nothing had happened. In the days that followed, I convinced myself it had been a nightmare, a hallucination from the fumes when I cleaned behind the appliance. I deleted the audio recording without listening to all of it. I scrubbed the strange stains from my clothes until they faded to nearly nothing. But things changed subtly around me. Food spoiled faster in my refrigerator. My reflection hesitated a fraction of a second before mirroring my movements. The tap water tasted faintly of iron. At night, I dreamed of stairs spiraling down into darkness and woke with dust on my feet. A week later, I noticed my neighbor watching me from their window, not with curiosity or friendliness, but with recognition and fear. When I waved, they quickly pulled their curtains closed. The next day, their house stood empty, a for sale sign hammered hastily into their lawn. I found myself standing in front of my refrigerator more and more often, listening. Sometimes, with my ear pressed against the cool metal door, I could hear the faint scraping of fingernails on stone coming from somewhere behind and below. Yesterday, I pulled the refrigerator forward again. The doorway was still there, but different now, wider, the wood of the frame darker and slick with moisture. The steps beyond seemed less steep, more inviting. I stood there for a long while, listening to whispers drift up from below. They spoke my name now, but not quite right, as if trying it out, learning the shape of it. I know I should move away, sell this house to some unsuspecting buyer, forget about the stairs behind the refrigerator, but where would I go? The stains on my clothes have spread to my skin, dark patches that grow larger each day, velvet soft to the touch. My teeth ache constantly, reshaping themselves in my mouth. Food has lost its taste, but I find myself licking the condensation from the back of the refrigerator, savoring its mineral tang. And sometimes, catching my reflection in windows or mirrors, I see that smile again, too wide, too knowing. It knows I'll go back down those stairs eventually. We both do. After all, something came up those stairs the first time, wearing my face, living my life. And whatever was left of me is still down there, waiting. In the darkness, behind the refrigerator, at the bottom of the stairs. Story 8, he would freeze, hackles raised, staring at the same corner of the room every night. No growl, no bark, just silence and fear. Then he'd whimper, backing away, tail low. I sat in the corner once just to see. The air there was still, but it had a smell I couldn't place, like rain on burnt leaves. Then I felt the pressure on my chest, like someone kneeling gently. At first I dismissed it as nothing more than Max being a typical retriever, sensitive to drafts or perhaps hearing neighbors through the thin walls of my apartment. But the ritual continued with unsettling precision. Each evening, as darkness settled, he would stop whatever he was doing, his body becoming rigid, his attention fixed on that same unremarkable corner where two white walls met beneath a small vent. The first week I checked for mice, found nothing. The second week I sealed the vent, Max still stared. By the third week I had developed a habit of watching him watch the corner, my skin prickling when his ears perked forward, his muscles tensing beneath golden fur. "What do you see, boy?" I'd whisper, but my voice seemed to break whatever spell held him, and he'd shake himself, padding over to press against my legs as if seeking reassurance. This became our nightly dance, his alert stillness, my questioning, his retreat to my side, until the night I decided to investigate. The corner looked ordinary white paint, slightly scuffed where furniture had scraped against it during my move. I knelt down, running my fingers along the baseboards, finding nothing but a thin layer of dust. But as I shifted position, placing my palm flat against the wall, I felt it a subtle vibration, almost imperceptible, like the hum of distant machinery. Curiosity overwhelmed caution. I pressed my ear against the wall. Nothing at first, then a faint, rhythmic pattern emerged, not quite a sound, more a sensation, a pulsing just below the threshold of hearing. Max whined from across the room, refusing to approach. That night I dreamt of standing in that corner, but the walls had become transparent, revealing an endless dark corridor stretching beyond. Something stood at the far end, watching me. I woke drenched in sweat, Max pressed against my back, trembling. The next day I bought a stethoscope, feeling slightly foolish as I pressed it against various points on the wall. The strange vibration was stronger now, more distinct. It reminded me of breathing, if breathing could somehow be both mechanical and organic at once. I recorded it on my phone, but when I played it back, the recording contained nothing but static. I found myself spending evenings sitting in that corner, back pressed against the wall, feeling the strange pulsation against my spine. The smell grew stronger, burnt leaves and rain, yes, but now with undertones of something metallic. Max refused to enter the room during these sessions, watching anxiously from the doorway. Sleep became elusive. When I did manage to drift off, my dreams were filled with that dark corridor. Each night, the figure at the end stood closer. Each night, its features remained frustratingly obscured, just beyond the reach of recognition. Each night, I woke with the certainty that the corner of my room connected to somewhere else, somewhere not meant for human access. I began documenting everything: the frequency of Max's alerts, the changing intensity of the vibrations, the evolving scent. My notebook filled with increasingly desperate entries. Day 15, vibrations stronger during night. Temperature drop of 5 degrees in corner versus rest of room. Day 17, Max refused food. Spent entire day watching corner. Vibration now audible, low hum just at edge of hearing. Day 19, found strange residue on wall, dark, sticky. Smells like copper and ash, burns slightly when touched. Research became my obsession. I searched for similar phenomena, spending nights reading accounts of haunted spaces, dimensional breaches, sensory anomalies. Nothing quite matched what was happening in my home, in my mind. A rational part of me suggested moving out, but curiosity had become a hunger. I needed to understand. The mystery had worked its way into my consciousness like a splinter, impossible to ignore, painful to extract. On the 20th night, something changed. Max broke his pattern. Instead of freezing, staring, retreating, he approached the corner directly, his movements stiff, unnatural, as if pulled by invisible strings. He pressed his nose against the wall and howled a sound so mournful and alien that it froze the blood in my veins. Then silence, complete, absolute silence. The background noise of my apartment, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sounds of traffic, the whisper of my own breathing all vanished, replaced by a vacuum of sound that pressed against my eardrums with physical force. In that silence, the wall began to change. The surface remained solid to the touch, but visually it seemed to ripple, like the surface of water disturbed by an unseen force. The ripples expanded, darkened, formed patterns that hurt my eyes to follow, geometric impossibilities that seemed to fold in on themselves. Max whimpered once, then pressed forward, his body somehow passing through the still solid wall. Not breaking through it, passing through it, as if the wall had become permeable to only him. I lunged forward, fingers clutching at his disappearing tail, but touched only cold plaster. He was gone. The wall was solid again. The silence broke, normal sounds rushing back with disorienting suddenness. I spent that night pounding on the wall, calling for Max, pressing my ear against the surface, desperate for any sign. By morning, my knuckles were bloody, my voice hoarse. The wall remained unyielding, ordinary, as if nothing had happened. Days passed. I barely ate, barely slept. The corner remained silent, the vibrations gone, the strange smell faded. Whatever doorway had opened had closed completely. On the 7th day after Max disappeared, I woke to a scratch at my bedroom door. Hope surged through me as I rushed to open it, expecting to find my dog returned somehow from whatever impossible place had claimed him. The hallway was empty, but on the floor lay a small object that hadn't been there when I'd gone to bed: Max's collar, the metal tag still attached. It was covered in a dark residue that matched what I'd found on the wall days earlier, and it was warm to the touch, as if recently worn. I picked it up with trembling hands, and as my fingers closed around it, I heard it, distant but unmistakable, Max barking. Not from anywhere in my apartment, but from inside my head, or perhaps from somewhere far beyond normal space. His familiar bark transformed into something both pleading and warning. That night I found myself sitting in the corner again, Max's collar clutched in my hands, the tags making a soft, jingling sound as my fingers trembled. The wall remained ordinary, unyielding, but as darkness deepened, I noticed something I hadn't before. My shadow on the wall was wrong. It moved a fraction of a second after I did, its outline blurring at the edges. I pressed my palm against the wall one more time. The vibration had returned, stronger than ever, and with it, a certainty formed in my mind. The wall wasn't a barrier but a membrane. Something had reached through to take Max, and now it had noticed me. The pressure returned to my chest, heavier this time, deliberate. Not someone kneeling, but someone pressing, testing resistance. I should have been frightened, should have run. Instead, I leaned into the pressure, curious beyond caution, desperate for answers. As I write this final entry, the wall before me continues to ripple. The smell of burnt leaves and rain and metal fills my nostrils. My shadow has detached itself from me, stretching into a shape that approximates humanity but misses in subtle, disturbing ways. I hear Max barking, clearer now, not warning but welcoming. The pressure on my chest has become an embrace. The corner of my room has become a door, and I have become a traveler with one foot already across the threshold. If you're reading this and your pet begins to stare at an empty corner of your room, look away. Block your ears. Hold your breath against the smell of rain on burnt leaves. Some doors should remain closed. Some sounds should remain unheard. But Max is waiting, and I need to know. Story 9, no stamp, no return address, just folded pieces of paper slid under my door. They were written in my handwriting, in phrases I didn't remember writing, some kind, some cruel, some begging me to stop. The ink smelled like lemon and rust. Today, the latest note read, "You're almost finished. I never started anything." At first, I thought it was a prank, someone mimicking my distinctive scrawl, the way my wise curl and mites cross too high. I collected each note, spreading them across my kitchen table, comparing the handwriting against shopping lists and birthday cards I'd written. The match was perfect down to the slight pressure indentation on the left side of each page where my palm always rests. That night I woke to the sound of paper sliding against wood. The whisper of it moved through my dreams and pulled me into wakefulness. By the dim glow of streetlight filtering through my curtains, I saw it, another letter, appearing as if pushed by invisible fingers beneath my bedroom door. My breath caught. I remained frozen, watching the white rectangle complete its journey into my room, then lie still against the dark floor. Something felt wrong about the air, heavier, colder. I waited until morning light before retrieving it. "Remember the woman in the red coat? You should have helped her." My fingers trembled. The woman in the red coat. A memory stirred a rainy evening, someone slipping on wet concrete, a flash of crimson fabric. I had kept walking, hadn't I? Just glanced back to make sure she was getting up. She was fine. She was getting up. The next letter arrived while I was cooking dinner. I heard nothing, saw nothing, just turned from the stove to find paper on my counter where empty space had been moments before. "The medicine cabinet holds what you need. Take them all at once." I moved through my apartment, checking locks, windows, vents, everything secure. No signs of entry. The letters kept coming. I began documenting everything. I set up my phone to record my sleep, installed a camera facing my front door. The footage showed nothing, yet the notes continued appearing. On the recordings, the paper simply materialized between frames, as if the camera blinked at precisely the wrong moment. The next letter said only, "Look in the mirror longer, you'll see me waiting." That night I stood before my bathroom mirror. My reflection stared back, familiar yet somehow wrong. I leaned closer, examining my own eyes, my own mouth. For a brief moment, so quick I nearly dismissed it, my reflection seemed to move independently, lips forming words I couldn't hear. I started carrying a notebook everywhere, writing down everything I did, creating a record to prove to myself what I had and hadn't written. The pages filled with mundane details: bought coffee, worked from home, called mom. I began sleeping with the notebook clutched against my chest. One morning I woke to find pages torn from it, rearranged into a new letter on my nightstand. You think documenting will save you. I am your documentation. My handwriting throughout the notebook had subtly changed. Words I remembered writing now contained phrases I didn't recognize, slipped between sentences I knew were mine. Help me appeared in margins. Stop writing was scrawled across a grocery list. I called a friend who agreed to stay the night. We locked the doors, checked every closet, every possible hiding place. I felt safer with someone else present. We talked late into the evening, and I finally confessed my fears. What if something's wrong with me? I asked. What if I'm writing these myself and forgetting? She looked uncomfortable. That seems unlikely. During the night, I woke to find her gone, her overnight bag missing. On my phone was a text from her. I had to leave. You kept getting up and writing notes, then acting like you didn't remember. You need help. My heart raced as I searched the apartment. In the kitchen, I found a new letter. Your friend was right to leave. She saw what you're becoming. I grabbed my notebook, flipping through for any sign of what happened during the night. Several pages contained the same phrase repeated. I am watching myself write this. The mirror in my hallway caught my attention. I approached it slowly, watching my reflection move with me. As I stood before it, something shifted in my peripheral vision. My reflection's hand moved differently than mine. Just for an instant, fingers splayed while mine were curled. I backed away but found myself drawn back again. This time I pressed my palm against the cool surface. My reflection did the same, but the sensation beneath my fingers felt wrong, like touching warm skin instead of cold glass. That night, I barricaded my bedroom door and swallowed sleeping pills to force unconsciousness. I dreamt of writing, endless writing, my hand moving across paper without my control, forming words I didn't choose. I woke surrounded by letters. They covered my bed, my floor fluttered from the ceiling fan, all in my handwriting, all with the same message. You can't stop me by sleeping. I am what happens when you sleep. I gathered every pen, pencil, marker in my apartment and threw them away. I deleted writing apps from my phone. I wore gloves to prevent skin contact with surfaces that might record my fingerprints. The next letter arrived anyway, written in what looked like dried blood. Removing the tools doesn't remove the author. I checked my body for cuts, found none. The iron smell of the ink filled my nostrils, making me gag. I stopped sleeping. Caffeine and fear kept me awake for days. My reflection in mirrors now regularly moved a fraction of a second too late, smiling when I frowned, eyes focusing somewhere behind me. During my third night awake, my vision blurring from exhaustion, I noticed something on my arms, thin lines of text appearing like bruises beneath my skin, words forming in my veins, written from within. I couldn't read them clearly, but they shifted when I moved, rearranging themselves beneath my flesh. In my kitchen, I found my notebook open, a new entry, written while I believed I was pacing my living room. The separation is almost complete. Soon I will no longer need your hand to write. That night, fighting sleep, I heard the scratching of pen on paper coming from every room at once. I stumbled to my bathroom, splashing water on my face. In the mirror, my reflection watched me with curious detachment. When I raised my hand to touch the glass, my reflection kept its arms at its sides. "Who are you?" I whispered. My reflection smiled. Its mouth moved, forming words I could now understand without sound. "I am what you're becoming." I blinked and my reflection was normal again, mimicking my horrified expression. The next morning I found a single letter on my pillow. "Tonight we finish what we started." I fled my apartment, drove until I found a motel far from home. I checked in, requesting a room with no mirrors. Inside, I pushed the dresser against the door and sat on the bed, determined to stay awake. As darkness fell, I noticed something on the blank wall across from me, a shadow, moving like liquid, forming the shape of a person. My shadow, but standing while I sat. I watched, paralyzed, as it raised what looked like a pen and began writing on the wall, invisible words that I somehow understood. "You can't escape your own reflection. I've been watching from inside you for so long." My hand began to move without my control, fingers forming shapes against my thigh as if writing. I tried to stop it, gripping my wrist with my other hand, but the movement continued. My fingers spelled out words against my skin. "Let me out." I felt a splitting sensation, like my body was tearing along an invisible seam. The shadow on the wall grew more distinct, more solid. With each passing moment, I felt lighter, less substantial. My hand raised itself before my eyes. I could see through it now, translucent against the dingy motel room wallpaper. The shadow stepped forward from the wall, gaining depth and color with each movement. Yet I approached the bed, now wearing my face, my clothes, my expression of triumph. "Thank you for letting me become," my voice said from its mouth. "Some people never allow themselves to transform." I tried to speak, but found I had no voice, no substance. I was becoming the shadow, while my shadow took solid form. The new me picked up a pen from the nightstand and wrote one final note, sliding it toward what remained of my fading form. "We're finished now, your turn to watch from within." I felt myself drawn toward my former body like water pulled into a drain, compressed into something small and dark that lived behind the eyes that once were mine. From here, I can only watch as someone else lives through my hands, speaks with my voice, writes words I would never choose. Sometimes when they write, I can almost push through, make a letter form differently, change a word. Small rebellions from my prison behind the mirror. If you receive a letter in handwriting that looks like your own, don't read it. Burn it immediately. And whatever you do, don't start documenting what's happening. Because something might be waiting to finish what you never meant to start. Story 10. In the quiet embrace of the autumn garden, a delicate veil of fog enveloped the world as I set out to gather the fallen leaves. The crisp air tenderly kissed my cheeks, carrying the earthy perfume of moist soil and the lingering fragrance of chrysanthemums I had carefully planted weeks ago. A profound stillness hung in the air, broken only by the soft, rhythmic shuffle of dry leaves beneath my feet and the occasional serenade of an early bird awakening to the dawn. As I diligently raked near the weathered stone bench, a faint glimmer amidst the fallen leaves caught my eye. A silvery sheen beckoned me, akin to a dewdrop capturing a fleeting ray of sunlight. Bending down slowly, I swept aside the damp foliage to reveal a treasure hidden beneath an antique necklace. Exquisitely crafted, it bore an oval pendant adorned with intricate floral motifs and a small azure gem at its heart, gleaming with a mesmerizing radiance. Intrigued, I cradled the necklace in my hands, feeling its ethereal weight and the cool touch of its surface against my skin. It was a piece of elegance unfamiliar to me, a solitary dweller in this house for over 2 decades. None among my neighbors had ever worn such a distinctive ornament. The azure gem continued to shimmer with a peculiar luminosity, almost as if it held a secret light of its own. That night, after tenderly cleansing the necklace, I placed it on the nightstand by my bedside. Falling asleep, I watched as moonbeams filtered through the window, casting playful shadows upon the walls, seemingly dancing in harmony with the necklace's metallic allure. Throughout the night, I stirred from slumber, captivated by a distant melody, a haunting tune akin to a music box whispering its secrets within the confines of the house, only to fade away upon my awakening. With the morning light, I observed the necklace had shifted subtly on the nightstand, as though moved by an unseen hand in the night. In the daylight, the azure gem appeared less vibrant, yet as I held it once more, a gentle warmth emanated from the metal, a departure from the chill it had exuded the day prior. Curiosity piqued, I resolved to uncover the origins of this mysterious heirloom. In the ensuing days, subtle alterations unfolded within the confines of my home. Objects on the kitchen table seemed displaced each morning, as if scrutinized under the veil of night. Family portraits adorning the hallway wall appeared to tilt at varying angles daily. Meanwhile, the nocturnal melody persisted, growing clearer, more distinct, yet eluding pinpoint localization. One evening, ensconced in my armchair engrossed in a tome, the necklace resting nearby on the side table, I distinctly discerned the delicate patter of footsteps ascending from above. Hesitantly, I ascended the staircase, mindful to muffle my own footfalls, only to find emptiness awaiting me. Yet in the guest room repurposed as a storage space, a mysterious wooden box materialized, its intricate floral inlays mirroring those of the necklace. Within the box, nestled upon a cushion of faded velvet, lay a photograph aged by time. It depicted a young woman adorned with a necklace identical to my own find. Inscribed on the photograph's back, faded ink bore a date and a poignant message: to remember the happy days in the garden. From that night forth, the melody of the music box grew in frequency, its haunting strains now a comforting presence, akin to a lullaby sung by the very walls of the house. Occasionally, amidst the tranquil autumn evenings in the garden, a vague figure would flit among the trees, a specter of memory seeking to materialize. The enigmatic woman in the photograph remained a mystery, her connection to the necklace and my garden shrouded in the mists of time. Yet I embraced this enigma as an integral part of my existence, akin to the ebb and flow of seasons or the inexorable passage of time. The necklace, a silent guardian on my nightstand, bore witness to the quietest nights when the moon reigned full in the sky and the zephyr whispered through the leaves. In those hushed moments, a faint laughter mingled with the music box's melody, an echo of joyous days lost to the mists of yesteryears, resonating through the tapestry of time. Story 11. In our quiet neighborhood, autumn nights are tinged with a touch of magic. The crisp air carries whispers of fallen leaves, and the gentle rustling of footsteps on dampened streets adds to the serene atmosphere. Lately, on my evening strolls home from work, a peculiar occurrence has captured my attention. At the intersection of Maple Street and Rose Avenue, one particular streetlight stands out from the rest. Unlike its counterparts that steadfastly illuminate the path with a warm glow, this light behaves in an enigmatic manner. As I draw near, it begins to dim gradually, as though concealing a secret from my eyes. Initially, I dismissed it as a mere malfunction, an aging streetlight in need of repair, but as the nights passed, I couldn't ignore the pattern. The light only dimmed when I approached, remaining steady for others who passed beneath it. Intrigued, I decided to investigate further. Standing some 60 feet away, leaning against the weathered facade of an Art Deco building, I observed the streetlight's beam casting elongated shadows and causing dew-kissed grass to shimmer in the nearby garden. With each step closer, the light flickered, diminishing in brightness as if hesitating. When I reached a mere 15 feet away, the once radiant glow had faded to a faint shimmer, barely illuminating the surroundings. Stepping into the circle of dim light, a profound stillness enveloped me, as if even the city's usual cacophony had receded along with the light. Gazing up at the streetlight's glass, I noticed peculiar markings etched upon its surface, forming an intricate design that eluded clear interpretation. Attempting to examine it closer with my phone's flashlight, a sudden gust of wind stirred the leaves, and I sensed a subtle movement within the glass. Subsequently, I made it a habit to pass under that very streetlight on my nightly walks. The ritual repeated each time, the light dimming in my presence, the silence deepening, the sensation of a watchful gaze from above. Gradually, I began to discern subtle shifts in the light's hue, as though it communicated through imperceptible changes in color. One moonlit night, within the familiar circle of twilight, a unique sound reached my ears. A faint metallic hum, laced with a melodic rhythm, seemed to emanate from within the pole, resonating upward like a musical note. Placing my hand on the cool metal, I felt the vibrations reverberate through my palm, as if the streetlight sought to convey a message. I meticulously documented each encounter, noting how the dimming intensity correlated with lunar phases, and how the light would always return to full brightness exactly 23 seconds after I passed. Curiously, I found myself adapting to the streetlight's peculiar behavior, unconsciously partaking in a silent ritual as I approached. Sometimes I lingered beneath its subdued glow, immersing myself in the faint hum that whispered tales of bygone eras. I refrained from seeking a rational explanation for this phenomenon, preferring to embrace the mystery that seemed to reserve its enigmatic display solely for me. Every evening as I made my way home, I sensed the streetlight's silent anticipation, creating a twilight realm where our unique encounter unfolded. Night after night, I engaged in this mysterious dance with the dimming light, unsure if it stemmed from electrical quirks, unexplained anomalies, or something beyond comprehension. Yet in that fleeting moment of darkness, as the world paused and shadows danced, I felt connected to a larger enigma, a cryptic narrative woven through the language of light and shadow. Story 12, the doorbell remained silent on that autumn afternoon. A gentle knock, barely audible, echoed through the stillness of the house, akin to the delicate flutter of a moth's wings against a window pane. I sat on the couch, enveloped in a cozy blanket, engrossed in a book, as the rain outside played a soothing melody on the window glass. Rising from my seat with a sense of calm, I assumed it was merely the wind causing a faint disturbance in the tranquil atmosphere. Opening the door, I found emptiness greeting me. There at the doorstep sat a neatly squared brown package, devoid of any labels or addresses. My name, elegantly inscribed in ancient calligraphy, was the only mark upon it, penned with a flourish that seemed to hark back to another time. The cardboard felt smooth to the touch, untouched by the incessant rain, its weight surprisingly light as I lifted it and brought it indoors. The silence deepened, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the pendulum clock and the soft patter of rain persisting outside. Seated once more on the couch, I scrutinized the mysterious package from all angles. No visible signs of sealing or openings marred its flawless edges, as if it had been crafted by skilled hands well versed in the art of origami. A subtle fragrance wafted from within, a blend of scents evoking memories of ancient books, black tea, and a hint of sandalwood, yet indefinable in its essence. Cradling it in my lap, I fancied a delicate movement stirring from inside, indiscernible yet palpable, like a subtle dance of unseen currents within. The waning afternoon light cast elongated shadows across the room, the natural twilight enveloping everything in a gentle embrace as I eschewed artificial illumination. The package seemed to absorb the fading light peculiarly, its surface hinting at a material that played with reflections in a mysterious manner. After a contemplative pause, I resolved to explore its contents, tracing my fingers along its edges, each fold and crease revealing a warmth that seemed to ebb and flow in a cryptic rhythm. A distant recollection stirred in my mind, a vague memory akin to a dream half remembered upon waking, of a similar package encountered in the recesses of childhood, bearing only a name inscribed in that same elegant script. The rain outside intensified slightly, its rhythmic cadence mingling with the warmth sensed upon the package's surface, drawing invisible connections in my mind. Lost in reverie, the room's temperature seemed to shift imperceptibly, reaching a state of equilibrium that transcended notions of hot or cold. The familiar scent emanating from the package grew more pronounced, intertwining with the fragrance of rain entering through the cracked window, as if nature itself conspired in a silent symphony of scents and sensations. A remarkable discovery awaited my touch, luminous imprints faintly glowing where my fingers brushed the cardboard, a fleeting display of ephemeral light akin to shooting stars in a velvety night sky. Time slipped away unnoticed as I observed this enchanting phenomenon, only realizing the onset of evening when I lifted my gaze to the dimly lit room, bathed in a serene bluish hue. The package exuded a subtle glow, barely perceptible, casting a mesmerizing aura in the gathering dusk. Choosing to leave its secrets undisturbed for the night, I reverently placed it on the coffee table and illuminated the room with a soft lamp's glow. In the ensuing days, the package remained a silent enigma, a presence that seemed to shimmer faintly in twilight, its inner essence hinting at a hidden dance of mysteries. The elusive scent continued to evolve, a subtle metamorphosis with each passing hour, familiar yet elusive, defying complete identification. The origins of the package and its true contents remained shrouded in mystery, its allure lying not in disclosure but in contemplation. Whenever autumn rain tapped against the windows in the quiet evenings, thoughts inevitably drifted back to that enigmatic package, a symbol of perfect intrigue, an unsolved riddle that beckoned not for answers but for silent admiration. And I couldn't help but ponder if, in a distant abode, another soul gazed upon a similar parcel, bearing their name inscribed in that same elegant hand, contemplating the choice between unraveling its mysteries or allowing the dance of enigma to continue undisturbed. Story 13. Silence wrapped around the narrow streets of the quaint hillside town like a velvet cloak, hushing even the whispers of the night. This was an autumn evening painted with the scent of burning wood and the earthy fragrance of damp leaves, while a shroud of mist slithered through the alleys like a phantom cat. From my perch on the third floor of the old building, I gazed out at the windows of the neighboring houses, each one bathed in a soft, amber glow. It struck me as odd to see so many lights aglow at such a late hour, yet there was no sign of life behind those foggy panes. The church bells tolled 10 in the evening, their somber chime echoing through the stillness with a hollow, ethereal quality, as though the sound itself was draped in a cloak of cotton. It had only been 3 weeks since I had arrived in this town, but never had I witnessed the streets so devoid of activity. Normally, even at this late hour, a stray dog would be led for a wander by an elderly resident, or the local youth would linger outside the corner bar, exchanging stories under the flickering street lamp. Seated in my favorite armchair, cradling a cup of chamomile tea between my palms, I observed the absence of even the usual stray cat that frequented Mrs. Miller's windowsill. Wisps of steam curled upwards from the cup, twirling in the air to form fleeting shapes that dissolved into the shadows of the room. I had opted to keep only a soft reading lamp illuminated, casting gentle shadows on the cream-colored walls. A sudden rustling stirred in the hallway leading to the bedroom, drawing my attention. It was a sound akin to paper being dragged lightly across the floor, a noise that piqued my curiosity more than it stoked fear. Rising slowly from the armchair, I set the cup down on the wooden side table and made my way towards the source of the sound. With each step, the air seemed to grow cooler, not the harsh bite of winter, but a coolness that whispered of ancient secrets, like the hush within an old church. The floorboards murmured softly beneath my weight, a familiar creak that somehow offered a strange sense of reassurance. Upon reaching the threshold of the bedroom, I paused. The door stood slightly ajar, allowing a sliver of bluish light to filter through a light unlike any other in the house. Pushing the door open with a gentle creak, I found the window tightly shut, yet the curtains swayed as if stirred by a phantom breeze. Upon the floor beneath the window lay a single sheet of paper. Drawing closer, I realized it was a yellowed newspaper page. The date at the top read October 15, 1954, and the headline of the article seized my attention: Mysterious Night of Silence in Pine Grove. The story recounted a night when the townsfolk had collectively retreated into their homes, as if bound by an unspoken pact whose origins had faded into the mists of time. As I perused the article, a movement outside the window snagged my gaze. Across the street, the lights in the houses began to flicker and fade, one by one, like candles extinguished by a phantom breath. Yet within those darkened windows, I discerned motionless figures that appeared to be gazing out towards the deserted street. My phone buzzed in the pocket of my robe, a message from the building's WhatsApp group. Tonight, remain indoors, it is imperative. Peering out once more, I noticed that all the lights had now been extinguished, save for mine. In the deepening hush, I could hear the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat, slowing as if harmonizing with some ancient, enigmatic force. Perching on the edge of the bed, still clutching the newspaper sheet, I marveled at how soft and worn the paper felt, as though it had been handled countless times over the years. Beyond the window, the fog had thickened, veiling the streetlights in a luminous haze. From my vantage point, I beheld the entire length of the main street, devoid of life, shrouded in a spectral tranquility. Recalling the accounts in the article, which detailed how the townspeople had awoken the following morning with no recollection of the events of the silent night, I rose slowly and made my way to the light switch. Pausing before flicking it off, I cast one final glance out at the street. The mist outside had assumed sinuous, almost dancing forms, and for a fleeting moment, I fancied I glimpsed shadowy figures moving amidst the swirling whiteness. With the room plunged into darkness, I stretched out on the bed, fully clothed. The silence enveloped me like a cocoon, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the nightstand. As slumber beckoned, I pondered whether I would awaken the next morning with memories of this peculiar night, or if, like the townsfolk of old, I would remain oblivious to the cyclical mystery woven into the fabric of our existence. The last vestige of awareness that lingered in my mind before succumbing to sleep was the distant tolling of midnight bells, their resonance muted and otherworldly, as if drifting from a realm where silence reigned as the universal language of all beings. Story 14. Snow drifted down in hushed whispers that evening within the cozy confines of my quaint antique shop. The delicate flakes pirouetted behind the windows, bathed in the gentle glow of vintage lamps, casting a spell of tranquility. The aged wooden shelves murmured softly as they cradled their precious cargo, harmonizing with the unhurried cadence of the pendulum clock's hands. A symphony of scents enveloped the air, a blend of well-worn books and beeswax, a fragrance that only the passage of time could bestow. Amidst the choreography of arranging books, the crystal-clear chime of the doorbell pierced the stillness. A rush of frosty air tiptoed into the shop, carrying with it a handful of snowflakes that dissolved upon the polished wooden floor. Turning to greet the visitor, I was momentarily struck by bewilderment. Standing at the threshold was a figure cloaked in shadows, their dark coat seeming to swallow the ambient light. A broad-brimmed hat obscured the upper portion of their countenance, while a gray wool scarf veiled the lower half. "Good evening," I murmured, attempting to cloak the subtle unease creeping up my spine with a veneer of professionalism. The visitor offered no reply but glided gracefully among the shelves, their gloved hands tenderly grazing the assorted treasures on display. An entrancing quality infused their movements, as if they were waltzing to a melody known only to them. I found myself captivated by their every gesture, noting how the light behaved peculiarly in their presence. Shadows deepened, thickened, assuming a life of their own. Coming to a halt before an antique mirror, a relic from centuries past acquired just the week prior, the visitor's gloved fingers traced the golden frame with deliberate care. A weighty silence descended upon the shop, punctuated solely by the measured ticking of the clock, each beat elongated. I tentatively sought their reflection in the mirror, only to be disconcerted by the revelation that the mirror's surface reflected naught but the shelf behind them, as though they were a specter. Approaching cautiously, the floor whispering beneath my steps, I inquired, "Can I assist you in locating a specific item?" My voice, a mere murmur, hung in the air. Slowly, the visitor pivoted towards me, their features obscured by shadows beneath the hat. With a fluid motion, they withdrew a yellowed parchment from their coat pocket. Unfurling it delicately on the counter beside the register, I beheld a list inscribed in elegant, antiquated script. It enumerated enigmatic artifacts, a mirror that remembers, a clock that counts backwards, a key that unlocks forgotten doors. As I perused the list, a chill seemed to permeate the shop, my breath materializing in the frosty air. Objects on the shelves trembled imperceptibly, as if acknowledging something in the visitor's presence. "I regret," I whispered, "I do not possess these particular items." For a protracted moment, the visitor remained motionless, then nodded sagely. Retrieving the parchment, they tucked it away with the same grace it had been produced. Making their way to the door, they paused before departing. Tilting slightly, a sound more akin to a whisper of thought than a spoken word emanated from the scarf. "You will." It was not a query, but a declaration. The bell tolled once more upon their exit, its timbre altered, resonating from a distant place. The snow continued its descent outside, yet for an instant it seemed suspended in time, frozen mid-fall. Later that night, upon securing the shop, I inspected the antique mirror. Its reflective surface appeared profound, hinting at concealed mysteries within its silvery depths. The pendulum clock, faithful timekeeper, had ceased its rhythmic march precisely at the moment of the visitor's arrival. Each evening thereafter, as shadows lengthened and light waned, I found myself drawn to the door, awaiting the bell's melodious echo. Every object in the shop appeared to share this anticipation, as though we all harbored the certainty that the visitor would return. For in an antique emporium, every item harbors a tale, and perchance some artifacts await the commencement of theirs. Story 15, the night held its breath, a symphony of gentle whispers mingling with the rhythmic patter of rain on the roof. Stirring from slumber, a familiar yet unfamiliar sight greeted me. A glimmer in the moon's soft light revealed an ancient brass key resting on the nightstand, its intricate details beckoning to be explored. The key felt cool in my grasp, its weight defying its size, bearing the marks of time in a way only cherished relics do. As I examined the key, its design defied convention, lacking the usual jagged edges or historical grooves. Instead, it bore smooth contours as if worn by centuries of touch, adorned with delicate floral patterns intertwined with cryptic symbols hinting at a forgotten language. An inexplicable urge stirred within me, propelling me to venture into the night. The familiar rooms of my home seemed transformed in the darkness, shadows reshaping the known into the unknown. Led by the key's faint, ethereal glow, I navigated through the house, the wooden floor creaking softly beneath my feet. The scent of aged wood and weathered paper hung in the air, guiding me through the silent corridors. Approaching each door, I felt a magnetic pull between the key and the wooden surfaces, a subtle vibration resonating through my fingertips. Though I refrained from inserting the key into any lock, an unspoken understanding told me it was not meant for mundane doors. It was in my study that the key's purpose became clearer. The antique bookcase, a relic from generations past, hummed in harmony with the key's presence. As I traced the key along its edges, a hidden melody seemed to echo within the room, casting dancing shadows from the flickering light. A reverberation deep and ancient filled the space as the key's glow intensified, revealing intricate patterns etched into the bookcase's wood. With a touch, a connection was made as if the key had found its rightful place. Time slowed, the air thickening with a sense of antiquity, shadows taking on a life of their own. Pressing the key against the bookcase's heart, a profound sigh rippled through the wood, unveiling glimpses of a forgotten realm within its polished surface. Morning's light eventually broke the spell, dispersing the nocturnal mysteries, yet leaving an indelible mark on my soul. In the days that followed, the key remained a silent sentinel, its enigmatic glow faded, but its weight a constant reminder of the night's revelations. Sometimes, in the hush of night, a distant vibration seemed to echo from the bookcase, a reminder of the connection forged in that mystical hour. The key now rests in a velvet-lined drawer, a silent guardian of secrets unknown. Its siren call still whispers in the quiet hours, prompting contemplation of the mysteries it holds. Perhaps it was not I who found the key, but the key that found me, unlocking doors to realms unseen. And in the stillness of the night, I ponder the untold secrets of a key without a lock, a silent keeper of mysteries untold. Story 16. The November breeze danced with the dry leaves along the driveway as I gazed at the silhouette of the forsaken mansion silhouetted against the heavy sky. Known as the house that time forgot, it held a mysterious past shrouded in whispers and faded memories. Approaching the weathered gate, I felt the chill of the wrought iron under my touch, the air carrying a hint of moss and damp stone. The neglected garden sprawled in a chaotic embrace of tangled vegetation, reclaiming the cracked walls as nature's own. Despite its neglect, the mansion exuded a haunting elegance that lingered in the stillness of the air. Tasked as a real estate agent to assess the property, I ventured further into the overgrown grounds. A peculiar sight greeted me, faint trails amidst the weeds, as if someone had passed through recently. But who could it be? The neighbors swore the mansion remained untouched for years. With a soft creak, the front door yielded to my touch, revealing a world cloaked in a bluish haze filtering through the closed shutters. The interior exuded an atmosphere thick with dust and the essence of aged wood. Each step echoed through the main salon, where veiled furniture draped in yellowed sheets cast ghostly shadows in the dim light. The mirrors on the walls played tricks with flickering reflections, adding an eerie depth to the stillness. Ascending the staircase, I trailed my hand along the polished wooden rail worn smooth by time. The upper floor greeted me with a corridor flanked by closed doors, each concealing a forgotten past. Room by room, I captured the essence of emptiness on camera until the final door beckoned me in. A bedroom frozen in time betrayed signs of recent disturbance amidst the layers of dust. A silver brush lay next to dark strands of hair, untouched by time like the rest of the room. The made bed bore a faint impression, as if someone had just vacated the spot. A sudden movement in the mirror caught my eye, a fleeting glimpse of a feminine figure seated on the bed, vanishing as swiftly as it appeared. Despite the empty room, a lingering presence hung in the air, setting my heart racing. Hastening my descent down the stairs, the salon seemed to watch me with its veiled mirrors as I hastened towards the exit. And then a faint hum drifted down from above, a haunting melody that tugged at my senses. Was it the wind or a figment of my imagination? Leaving with a shiver, I closed the door behind me, the garden now enveloped in a serene quietude. Glancing back at the mansion, a subtle movement behind an upstairs window caught my eye, a fleeting glow vanishing into the shadows. In the days that followed, I meticulously compiled my report on the property, capturing its essence on paper, its history, its potential, its secrets left unspoken. The house lingered on the market, a testament to its enigmatic allure. Occasionally drawn by an unseen force, I would pause by the rusty gate, eyes tracing the windows for a glimpse of the ethereal figure that seemed to dwell within the mansion's walls. Was she a ghost of the past, or a spirit bound to the house's mysteries? Perhaps the true secret of the never-inhabited house was not its lack of occupants, but the presence that lingered within, a silent guardian of forgotten memories. And so the mansion stood, a timeless enigma waiting to reveal its secrets to those who dared to listen. Story 17. The autumn wind softly brushed against the tree leaves, creating a natural symphony that intertwined with the hushed whispers of the crowd surrounding me. Seated on my cherished bench in the park, I observed the steady stream of people strolling along the paved pathways. The air held a crispness that carried the aroma of moist earth and damp wood. Though I held a book in my hands, my focus was captured by a subtle, nearly imperceptible sensation that had lingered with me for days. It had begun oh so subtly. One morning, as I made my way to work, a tingling sensation crept up my neck as though someone was watching me. Upon turning around, I only saw the usual rush of commuters hurrying towards their destinations. In the ensuing days, that feeling grew more frequent, more tangible. During lunch breaks, while shopping for groceries, even while sipping at my favorite caf, people continued to pass by my bench, some solitary, others in pairs. A woman in a scarlet coat paused briefly to check her phone. An elderly gentleman ambled leisurely with his polished wooden cane. Yet amidst those familiar figures, I sensed a difference, something elusive that I couldn't quite grasp. Closing my book, I rose and decided to take a stroll. The sky transitioned into amber hues, with the first streetlights flickering to life one by one. I meandered along the main avenue, the sound of my footsteps on gravel echoing softly. The sensation lingered, akin to an unseen shadow trailing me at a constant distance. Pausing before a storefront, I feigned interest in the displayed wares. In the glass reflection, I discreetly watched the passers-by behind me. It was then that I discerned something peculiar, a face in the crowd that appeared to be ever present. Yet its features eluded clear definition, slipping amidst the throng, materializing and vanishing with effortless fluidity. Continuing my walk, I remained vigilant. Turning onto side streets, then another. The crowd dwindled, yet the presence endured. Seated on a secluded bench in a tranquil square, encircled by aged edifices with illuminated windows, the chill in the air grew and the first stars emerged in the evening sky. And then it struck me unsettlingly, it wasn't just one gaze trailing me, but many. as if different individuals took turns, passing on the baton in a silent, meticulously choreographed ballet. Some faces recurred more frequently: a young woman in a blue scarf, a bespectacled middle-aged man, a boy with a backpack. Rising slowly, I made my way home, the weight of those gazes palpable on my back. The streets now lay nearly deserted, yet the sensation did not wane. If anything, it deepened in the quiet of the evening. Upon reaching my apartment, I settled by the window, peering down at the street below. People continued to pass, some pausing briefly, others continuing on their way. I pondered how many of them truly had destinations to reach, and how many were part of that enigmatic performance of which I had unwittingly become the focal point. Most disconcerting was how utterly ordinary they appeared, blending seamlessly with the crowd. As the city lights flickered to life one by one, I contemplated the essence of this silent surveillance. Who were these people? What were they seeking? And most importantly, why me? Queries lingered in the air as night gradually enveloped the city in its dusky embrace. Since that moment, I've grown accustomed to this awareness. At times, I endeavor to spot my watchers, while at others, I feign ignorance. Yet they linger, like shadows drifting at the peripheries of my everyday existence. And in the silence of night, as I gaze from my window at the emptying streets, I wonder if they too contemplate me, concealed in their abodes, preparing for yet another day of this enigmatic ballet of gazes and apparitions. Story 18. The weariness of a long day lingered as I entered my study. The desk lamp cast a warm glow, painting the walls in soft shadows of the book-laden shelves. The familiar scent of aged paper and ink embraced me, comforting as I sank into my worn leather armchair. There on the polished wood lay my grandmother's gift, my old diary, its brown leather cover and yellowed pages holding my deepest thoughts. As I reached for it, I noticed a peculiar sight. The last page was no longer blank. A different handwriting, elegant and unfamiliar, adorned the page with words I couldn't recall writing. The ink appeared fresh, as if just laid down. Intrigued, I leaned in, my breath slowing. The words painted a scene of an autumn evening, detailing the very room I sat in. Rain tapped against the window, its rhythmic melody blending with the gentle rustle of pages moved by an unseen hand. The lamp's light danced, casting shifting shadows. Enthralled, I continued reading, drawn into the mysterious narrative that seemed to anticipate my every move. Curiosity led him to turn the page, the text beckoned, and as if compelled, my fingers obeyed, revealing new words materializing before me. An invisible hand seemed to write, capturing my sensations in real time. The warmth of the lamp, my deepening breaths, the shiver down my spine. Mesmerized, I rose but couldn't tear my gaze from the unfolding tale. The sentences described books on the shelves, titles I didn't recall owning yet found before me. The writing flowed like a hypnotic clock's pendulum, marking time in the silent space. Seated on the corner couch now, I watched as the diary's pages gently turned on their own. The rain's song enveloped me, isolating me in a cocoon of mystery. The room felt inviting, as if this enigma had carved out its own realm within reality. I closed my eyes, letting the rain's lullaby soothe me. Upon opening them, the diary remained transformed. The words delved into forgotten memories, intimate moments never shared. With measured steps, I returned to the desk, the conversation-like text revealing hidden parts of my past. Curiosity mingled with peace as the night progressed, each word a step toward understanding undefined depths. Motionless for hours, I realized at midnight the profound connection I'd forged with the diary. The last words whispered, "Some mysteries need not be solved to be understood." Closing the diary gently, I felt the leather's familiar touch. The rain's accompaniment now seemed purposeful, not mere background noise. Would the words remain come morning or fade like a dream? As I readied for bed, I glanced back at the study. The diary lay untouched, yet within me a shift had occurred. Night embraced the room, the lamp's amber glow a silent witness to mysteries left unexplained. Closing the door, I pondered the value of unsolved enigmas. Perhaps, I mused, some mysteries hold more meaning when shrouded in uncertainty. Story 19. The hush of the night was broken by a distant, delicate tune. Nestled in my cherished armchair, draped in a woolen blanket with a cup of now-cold chamomile tea resting on the nearby table, I lifted my gaze from the book in my hands. The notes drifted through the air like ethereal snowflakes, barely perceptible yet undeniably present. It was a piano, I was certain, playing a melody that felt so familiar, like a whisper of a long-forgotten dream. The house cloaked in shadows, illuminated solely by a small lamp casting a circle of soft warmth around me. Shadows waltzed on the walls, swaying to the enigmatic music's rhythm. Rising slowly, I let the blanket slip to the floor with a gentle rustle. My steps on the wooden floor whispered softly as I made my way to the living room window. Beyond, the night lay calm and silent. The full moon bathed the garden in its silvery glow, revealing the tree silhouettes swaying in the nocturnal breeze. No signs of life stirred in the neighboring homes, all lost in the darkness. Yet the music persisted, seeming to emanate from every direction and no direction all at once. I traversed the house, room to room, tracing the elusive melody that shifted subtly as I moved. In the kitchen, it seemed to drift from the living room. In the living room, it hinted at originating from the staircase. On the stairs, it appeared to descend from the upper level. A hypnotic play of echoes and reverberations guided me in a silent dance through the familiar spaces of my abode. Reaching my upstairs bedroom, I noticed the slightly ajar door, though I could swear I had left it open that morning. Moonbeams filtered through the sheer curtains, painting intricate patterns on the floor. The music now clearer, more distinct, as if I had finally neared its origin. Pausing at the threshold, I surveyed the room intently. My old music box, a keepsake from my grandmother that sat on the bedside table, gleamed in the dim light. Never had I opened it, convinced it was broken. Yet now, in the stillness of the night, its petite ballerina twirled slowly, casting her dancing shadow on the wall. The melody mirrored the one that had lured me there, but amplified, as if the entire house had become a resonance chamber. Advancing with measured steps, I felt my heartbeat harmonizing with the music. The music box shone brighter than usual, as if emitting its own inner light. As I reached out to touch it, I noticed the surface was tepid, almost warm. The ballerina continued her graceful spins, but her visage, once a simple porcelain oval, now bore distinct features, familiar features. It was my grandmother's face, perfectly replicated in miniature, her sweet smile etched just as I remembered from childhood. The tiny figure's eyes seemed to lock with mine for an instant, and in that moment the melody shifted, morphing into a lullaby she used to sing to me as a child. I stood frozen, allowing the music to envelop me like a long-lost embrace. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of peace and longing. The notes continued to fill the room until gradually they ebbed in intensity, like waves receding from the shore. As the music finally faded, the music box closed with a soft click. Silence descended once more in the house, but it was a different kind of quiet, pregnant with significance. Descending to my armchair downstairs, I retrieved the blanket from the floor, wrapping myself once more in its comforting embrace. The book remained open to the page I had been reading, yet the words eluded my focus. My thoughts lingered on the music box and my grandmother. I pondered how many melodies had been ensnared in those silent gears all these years, awaiting the opportune moment to be set free. Since that night on occasion when the house is especially still and the full moon casts its glow on the garden, a gentle, familiar melody fills the rooms. I no longer seek out its source. I simply close my eyes and listen, understanding that some enigmas need not be unraveled to be comprehended. Story 20. The soft patter of rain on the roof of the ancestral home wove a soothing melody as I sifted through the remnants of my grandmother's legacy. Nostalgia hung heavy in the air, mingling with the fragrance of aged wood and swirling dust particles, basking in the golden hues of the setting sun trickling through the cream drapes. Each item I unearthed seemed to whisper tales of yesteryears, painting vivid memories in the quiet room. In the midst of these remnants, I stumbled upon a weathered photo album, its dark leather cover bearing the marks of time. Yet the material retained a gentle touch, a testament to years gone by. Placing it tenderly on the ancient oak table, the album exuded a faint scent of must and aged paper. Page after page, black and white photographs unfurled snippets of family history, weddings, birthdays, lazy summer days. Smiles frozen in time, echoes of kinship resonating through the years. A particular photo, captured in the garden of the house during a sun-drenched luncheon, seized my gaze. There, amidst familiar faces, stood a mysterious figure. Clad in a flowing dress and half shrouded by the brim of a hat, she lingered on the fringes of the gathering. Her presence, unknown to me, stirred a curiosity that tugged at my soul. Removing the photo from its confines, a date inscribed in my grandmother's elegant hand, summer 1956, offered no clues to the enigmatic woman's identity. As I scrutinized the image, a chill breeze swept through the room, causing the curtains to sway in a ghostly dance. Nightfall descended, casting a veil of ambiguity over the room. Illuminating the scene with an aged table lamp, a warm glow enveloped the space, illuminating the hidden depths of the photograph. A disquieting revelation revealed itself. The shadow cast by the mysterious figure defied the natural light, a discordant note in the harmony of shadows. Recollections stirred of a long-forgotten conversation overheard between my mother and aunt, speaking in hushed tones of a woman who had vanished without a trace after a brief sojourn within the family's embrace. The rain outside seemed to crescendo, its rhythm lulling me into a trance as the mystery unraveled before my eyes. The figure in the photo appeared to sharpen, as if beckoning me to unravel her secrets, to heed the unspoken truths woven within the frame. In a corner of the photograph, barely discernible under the lamplight, faint words etched a cryptic message: "She always sees." Intrigued yet unsettled, I returned the photo to its rightful place, unable to tear my gaze away. The album lay open, a portal to untold stories and hidden mysteries buried within the walls of this ancient abode. Night cloaked the house in its embrace, the rain a gentle lullaby murmuring secrets of bygone eras. Seated by the window, the album resting upon my lap, I delved into contemplation. Who was she, this spectral presence captured in a moment of time? What had she witnessed, unseen by prying eyes? The unanswered questions swirled amidst the falling rain, a symphony of whispers echoing through the room. With a heavy heart, I retired for the night, leaving the album agape on the table, the mysterious photo exposed to the night's watchful gaze. Casting a final glance from the threshold, the flickering lamplight painted an illusion of movement within the frame. Had the figure shifted, turned to meet my gaze, or was it a mere trick of shadows? The night held its secrets close, the enigma of the unknown woman veiled within the confines of the aged album, a tale destined to remain shrouded in mystery, a silent sentinel of the past. Story 21, the raindrops danced on my window in a rhythmic cadence, a soothing melody to accompany my late-night writing. Each droplet painted silvery trails as it slid down the glass, weaving an intricate tapestry of liquid light. My desk lamp bathed me in a soft amber glow, creating a bubble of warmth amidst the encompassing shadows of the room. I found solace in observing the rain, tracing patterns in its wandering paths, letting my mind wander and conjure stories hidden within its crystalline journey. But tonight, the rain held a mysterious allure. Its flow seemed to defy convention, as if moved by an unseen force. Initially dismissing it as a trick of fatigue, I allowed myself to be almost hypnotized by the gentle patter, teetering on the edge between consciousness and dreams. Yet the anomalies persisted, growing more defined with each passing moment. Droplets avoided certain areas of the glass, carving out dry spaces that gradually formed the outline of a figure. Intrigued, I leaned in closer, my breath catching in wonder. The reflection not only mirrored the rain outside, but also revealed the dim interior of my room behind me. As I scrutinized my own reflection, a peculiar sensation crept over me. It seemed slightly out of sync, as if dancing to a rhythm unknown to me, a fraction delayed in its mimicry of my movements. The rain's whisper intensified, its soft melody enveloping me in a cocoon of tranquility. Mesmerized, I watched as my reflection's hand reached out to touch the glass, a motion my own hand did not replicate. The movement flowed gracefully, like a performance choreographed in a language only the rain understood. A gentle warmth spread through me, contrasting with the cool air by the window. The features of my reflection began to shift, morphing into something simultaneously recognizable and alien. Its eyes held a depth that transcended my own, a wisdom echoing across eons. Frozen in place, I bore witness as my reflection underwent a subtle transformation, transcending gender and age to embody a timeless essence. The rain wove intricate patterns around this enigmatic figure, framing it with liquid silver. Droplets defied gravity, swirling in perfect circles, a spectacle defying rational explanation. A flicker of my desk lamp momentarily dimmed the room, ushering in a brief moment of darkness. In that ephemeral shadow, I sensed a presence beside me, tender and comforting as a mother's caress. When light returned, my reflection reverted to mirroring my actions flawlessly. Yet the rain persisted in its mesmerizing dance, a reminder of the extraordinary encounter that had transpired. I stayed rooted by the window for hours, contemplating the ethereal presence that had graced me with its silent visitation. As dawn approached, the rain subsided, leaving behind only mundane streaks on the window. But on subsequent rainy nights, I found myself drawn to that same spot, abandoning pen and paper on my desk. In those rare moments when the rainfall mirrored the perfect image, I caught glimpses of my other self peering back at me through the glass. A silent understanding passed between us, acknowledging the mysteries beyond explanation. The rain continued its descent, each droplet carrying the promise of another encounter. In those instances of mutual observation, I pondered the existence of a parallel self, perhaps gazing through their own window in a different reality, yearning for a fleeting connection through the shimmering threads of rain. Story 22. The gentle evening breeze whispered through the open window, carrying the delicate fragrance of night-blooming flowers from the garden. Nestled in my favorite armchair, I found myself entranced by the shadows waltzing across the walls of the living room, painted by the flickering candlelight. Beside me rested my cherished old Polaroid camera, a treasured heirloom gifted by my grandmother. Though it had been ages since I last used it, a mysterious urge nudged me to pick it up on this particular night. The familiar weight of the camera in my hands brought a sense of solace as I inspected it in the dimly lit room. My fingers gravitated towards the shutter button, a motion ingrained from countless memories. Without hesitation, I aimed the lens towards the darkest corner and clicked. The brief flash illuminated the space, followed by the mechanical whir of the photograph unfolding. Patiently I watched as the image materialized before my eyes, the colors blooming on the blank canvas. And then a peculiar sight caught my attention. In the corner I had captured, an ethereal figure materialized in the photograph. Indistinct yet present, it seemed to hover like a wisp of smoke, vaguely human-like. My gaze instinctively darted towards that corner of the room, but it held nothing but shadows. Intrigued, I snapped another photo in the same direction. This time the figure appeared more defined, almost drawing closer to the lens. A faint outline of a face emerged, its features hazy and enigmatic. A subtle chill traced down my spine, not of fear but of an inquisitive reverence. Spellbound, I continued to take shot after shot, as if under a mesmerizing spell. With each click, the figure in the images inched nearer, gradually sharpening into focus. It was as if the photograph served as a conduit for its manifestation, each exposure granting it more substance in our realm. The blurred form began to take shape, hinting at a bygone era's attire, perhaps from the 1940s. The room's silence deepened, an almost tangible presence enveloping the air. A heaviness settled, the atmosphere dense with an unseen but keenly felt entity. The room's temperature dipped imperceptibly, the candle flame flickering in a vacuum of stillness. Methodically, I continued to capture the unfolding mystery, each snapshot a silent exchange with the enigmatic visitor. In the final photo of that evening, the figure loomed so near that it nearly filled the frame. A gentle smile graced the woman's visage, her eyes seemingly piercing through the glossy surface right into mine. A haunting familiarity lingered in those features, stirring dormant memories from my past. As I rose to retrieve an old photo album, I noticed a slight tremor in my hands. Rifling through the faded pages, I stumbled upon a photo that confirmed my suspicions. A young image of my grandmother, taken with the very same Polaroid. The mirrored smile in that aged photograph mirrored the one captured in the last Polaroid shot. Delicately arranging the photos on the table, they narrated a silent tale of a connection bridging two realms, woven through the lens of a vintage camera. I never attempted to recreate that night's experiment, allowing the Polaroid to reclaim its place on the shelf. Even now, on tranquil evenings when the sunlight bathes the room in a golden hue, I find myself drawn to those photos. At times, it feels as if the smile in the images subtly shifts, as though my grandmother is attempting to convey a message. In those fleeting moments, the boundary between memory and reality blurs, as delicate as the surface of a freshly developed Polaroid. Story 23. In the quiet embrace of the night, the rain tapped gently on the windows of the cozy establishment, crafting a lullaby that intertwined with the soft clinks of cups and the murmurs of the few lingering patrons. Seated at the bar, I observed the play of light as it pirouetted across the polished, dark wood, a dance choreographed by the dim lights. Jack, the bartender, engaged in a slow and methodical ritual of polishing glasses, his movements almost hypnotic in their grace. An unfamiliar depth lingered in his gaze that evening, a nuance I had never before perceived in my habitual visits. His dark eyes seemed to harbor secrets as he prepared my customary lavender tea, his hands executing their tasks with customary precision, yet a subtle tremor betrayed him as he placed the cup before me. The delicate fragrance of lavender wafted through the air, mingling with the comforting sense of coffee and aged wood that enveloped the space. Jack's furtive glances were drawn repeatedly to a solitary figure seated in the farthest corner of the bar, a stillness about them that made them almost blend into the furniture. With measured movements, Jack approached to refill my cup, his voice carrying a hint of tension as he inquired about my desires. At that moment, a disconcerting detail caught my eye. A faint reddish stain marred the cuff of his otherwise pristine white shirt, barely visible in the dim ambience. Time ebbed away as the rain continued its rhythmic symphony outside, the other patrons departing one by one, leaving behind vacant seats and abandoned cups. Only the enigmatic figure in the shadowed corner lingered, a silent sentinel awaiting something or someone. Jack busied himself meticulously arranging the counter, his movements betraying a mounting disquiet, while the clock's insistent ticking measured the passage of moments. Another detail unfurled before me. Nestled among the bottles beneath the counter lay a weathered notebook with aged pages. Its contents, meticulously penned in minuscule script, chronicled names, dates, and places in meticulous order. Yet it was the final pages that seized my attention. Cryptic notations, nonsensical numbers, and intricate symbols meticulously inscribed. A shuffling of footsteps drew my gaze upward. The mysterious figure had finally stirred from their secluded table, making their way towards the exit. As they passed the counter, an exchange laden with unspoken significance transpired between them and Jack, a fleeting moment pregnant with tension, marked by an imperceptible nod from the bartender before the stranger vanished into the rain-soaked night. Jack returned to his duties, his demeanor altered, a tremor now evident in his once steady hands as he stowed away the glasses. His gaze drifted, lost in contemplation, perhaps grappling with elusive memories or seeking solace in forgetfulness. As I readied myself to depart, Jack halted me with a gentle gesture. In a hushed, deliberate tone, he shared a cryptic revelation. There are things a bartender witnesses and hears, things best left confined within these walls' silent embrace. Yet the burden of these secrets can grow oppressive when borne alone. He paused, weighing his words with care, shadows dancing across his weary countenance illuminated by the flickering lamplight. The notebook, a silent sentinel of concealed truths, remained half hidden among the bottles. With a faint, unfulfilled smile that failed to reach his eyes, Jack implored, "Return tomorrow, perhaps a tale will be spun, or perhaps not." Stepping out into the night's embrace, raindrops still whispering their gentle cadence, I glimpsed through the bar's window as Jack resumed his meticulous routine, a facade concealing depths I could only begin to fathom. The establishment's lights dimmed behind me as I ventured into the obsidian night, pondering how many untold stories lay shrouded behind bar counters, how many silent sentinels akin to Jack harbored burdens too weighty to unburden. The mysteries enfolded within those walls remained veiled as I departed, the rain a soothing companion in the starless night, whispering secrets untold. Story 24. The gentle November rain tapped softly against the windows of Grandma Rose's attic, crafting a natural lullaby that always whispered peace to my soul. Returning to this space after many years, now that Grandma had journeyed beyond, I immersed myself in the familiar scents of aged wood and weathered books that lingered in the air. The twilight seeped through the partially closed shutters, casting playful shadows upon the vintage wallpaper. Nestled in a forgotten corner, cloaked in a thin veil of dust, I uncovered Grandma's treasured brass record player, its surface gleaming like a mirror, a relic from a bygone era. Adorned with delicate floral patterns, the mechanical arm in the pristine turntable exuded a timeless charm. Beside it lay a collection of vinyl records, each snugly housed in weathered cardboard sleeves, a testament to the passage of time. As my fingers caressed the records, they paused on one that stood out. A blank white cover devoid of any title or author, save for a delicate golden border that shimmered in the dim light. Though unfamiliar, I felt an inexplicable pull towards it, a magnetic curiosity that beckoned me to explore its mysteries. Without hesitation, I placed the enigmatic record on the turntable and lowered the arm. As the needle made contact, a faint, comforting hum filled the room, signaling the awakening of the dormant music. Initially, there was only the gentle crackle of the vinyl, then the melody began to unfurl. A waltz played on the piano, its notes weaving a tapestry of unfamiliar yet strangely captivating harmonies. With each revolution of the record, the music underwent a subtle transformation, as if rearranging itself into new patterns before my very ears. Surrendering to the allure of the melody, I closed my eyes, allowing it to carry me away on its ethereal currents. Amidst the music, I detected a hint of jasmine, Grandma Rose's beloved flower, a scent that should have been impossible to perceive in the midst of winter. When I opened my eyes, the shadows in the room seemed to pirouette to a different rhythm, no longer beholden to the fading twilight but swaying in sync with the enigmatic composition. Across the wall, a figure materialized in shadow, dancing with a grace that belied the solitude of the room. The waltz persisted, and within its intricate notes I discerned a familiar laughter, pure and unmistakable, Grandma Rose's laughter, a melody etched in my memory. A peculiar blend of nostalgia and wonder washed over me, a sensation that transcended fear, leaving in its wake a profound sense of connection to a world beyond my own. Rising from my seat, I approached the window, where a fleeting reflection hinted at Grandma Rose, youthful and radiant in her favorite dance attire, twirling gracefully in the heart of the attic. Yet as I turned to face the room, the apparition dissolved into the stillness. The record spun on, reaching its crescendo before fading into silence, leaving behind a room that seemed transformed, vibrant with a newfound energy, as if the echoes of the past had been roused from their slumber. That evening, as I tenderly returned the mysterious record to its white sleeve, a detail caught my eye, a date inscribed in Grandma Rose's elegant script, her wedding day. Beneath it, in faint letters barely visible to the naked eye, a message awaited. Music is the key to our most cherished memories. Since that moment, each visit to the attic has become a quest for that elusive record. Sometimes it reveals itself readily, while on other occasions it hides among its companions, teasing me with its enigmatic presence. And with every listen, the melody evolves, offering infinite variations on a singular memory. I ponder the origins of this musical enigma, unsure if it was a gift crafted for Grandma Rose or a manifestation of a deeper mystery. Yet one thing remains certain. On those rainy evenings when the record player spins its otherworldly tune, the attic becomes enchanted, bridging the gap between past and present, reality and memory, like the fragile surface of an aged photograph. And perhaps in those fleeting moments, Grandma Rose twirls in eternal youth, eternal joy, caught in an everlasting waltz that transcends time itself. Story 25, the night draped the sea in an extraordinary tranquility. Perched on the porch of my wooden abode, cocooned in a woolen blanket, I immersed myself in the serene symphony of waves caressing the shore. The full moon cast a silvery path upon the water, beckoning me to follow its shimmering trail to the horizon. Lost in contemplation, a peculiar sight drew my gaze, a soft green glow, almost phosphorescent, swaying amidst the waves near the shore. Rising slowly from the weathered rocking chair, its faint creak a whisper in the night, I felt the salty breeze kiss my face as I descended the aged steps. The warm sand cradled my bare feet, a comforting sensation despite the late hour. Approaching the water's edge, where the gentle tide kissed the land, the greenish glow sharpened into focus. An antique glass bottle, its elegant elongated form cradling a yellowed piece of paper. I lifted the bottle gingerly. Surprisingly weighty, its surface bore a salt-encrusted patina, rendering it opaque in patches. Moonlight danced through the glass, casting hypnotic reflections. The cork stopper, sealed with cracked black wax aged by time, remained intact. Peering closer, I discerned that the glass held tiny sparkling crystals, akin to microscopic stars trapped within. Returning to the porch, the soft glow of the oil lamp bathed my find in light. Placing the bottle on the worn wooden table, I settled into my beloved armchair. The sea's whisper now seemed amplified, as though it harbored a message meant solely for me. With deliberate movements, I began to unravel the sealing wax. Crumbling like ancient ash beneath my touch, the cork stopper emerged impeccably preserved. Removing it, an unusual fragrance unfurled into the night air, a blend of seaweed, aged ink, and an elusive, indefinable essence. Within, a rolled paper awaited, bound by a faded blue silk ribbon. Fingers trembling slightly, I untied the knot. The paper, surprisingly resilient despite its age, unfurled beneath my touch. Sepia-toned ink lent an ancient quality to the script, rendering some passages nearly illegible. The words danced on the page as if inscribed in a language just beyond my grasp. The elegant handwriting bore signs of agitation, with certain letters distorted. As my eyes adjusted to the faded script, fragments of phrases emerged. Time flows differently here, and the light is never the same. Intricate sketches of unknown constellations and lunar phases intertwined within the text. Yet it was a perfect spiral at the page's bottom that held me transfixed, seemingly in motion when viewed from the corner of my eye. As I delved deeper, the oil lamp flickered oddly, casting elongated shadows that ebbed and flowed with the rhythm of the waves. The sea's melody shifted, no longer a gentle lapping, but a rhythmic whisper akin to a forgotten chant. The air thickened, time slowing to a languid pace around me. The closing paragraphs, clearer than the rest, spoke of a realm where dreams and reality intertwined seamlessly, where time flowed like water through cupped hands. The message's conclusion stole my breath. If you are reading these words, it means you too have been chosen. Look at the sea tonight, you'll see it's no longer the same as before. Raising my gaze from the paper, the moon loomed larger, its reflection upon the water now a geometric marvel. The bottle on the table pulsed with a green light akin to a slumbering heart. Retracing the message and returning it to the bottle, I left the cork aside. Staring at the horizon, I pondered if others had discovered such spectral messages, if they too had felt the sea's silent beckoning. The night drifted on, quiet and profound, yet something had shifted. Perhaps it was the star's reflection upon the water, or perhaps it was my newfound perspective on the world. Remaining on the porch until dawn, I listened intently to the sea whispering ancient secrets. The bottle sat upon the table, its green glow dimming with the break of day. Uncertain if I'd ever unravel the message's full meaning, I sensed a transformation within me that night. Occasionally, beneath the full moon's gaze, I glimpsed that ethereal green glow dancing among the waves, a reminder of mysteries best left undisturbed in the ocean's depths. Story 26. The gentle night breeze whispered through the open window, carrying the earthy fragrance of rain-soaked soil and nocturnal blooms. Nestled in the cozy embrace of my favorite armchair, I tuned into the symphony of the old house's breath all around me. The time-worn wooden frames emitted soft creaks, as though harboring ancient tales within their very fibers. Amid the hushed stillness, a mysterious rhythm captivated my senses. A steady, hypnotic beat echoed from the upstairs corridor, resembling the repetitive tap of a door knocker swayed by the wind, yet with a mesmerizing regularity that transcended the mundane. The warm glow of the reading lamp cast playful shadows on the wallpaper, conjuring fleeting silhouettes that danced in the flickering light. Setting aside my book, I surrendered to the allure of that persistent sound, finding a strange comfort in its rhythmic pulse. Rising languidly, my footsteps muffled by the plush Persian rug beneath, I embarked on a silent journey towards the source of the enigmatic beat. Each step on the ancient staircase elicited a faint groan, as if the house itself whispered secrets in response to my curiosity. The unchanging rhythm beckoned me through the dimly lit hallway, where moonbeams filtered through tall windows, painting the air with a cool, ancient fragrance of aged wood and beeswax. Following the sound like a siren's call, I reached the ornate door of the old library, perpetually closed. Yet the brass knocker persisted in its rhythmic dance against the sturdy wood, devoid of any logical explanation. The stillness of the night enveloped me as I stood transfixed, watching the knocker's ethereal motion, guided by some unseen force with infinite patience. Approaching with a mixture of trepidation and fascination, I felt the chilling touch of the brass handle against my fingertips, a relic of bygone hands that had once caressed its surface. Despite the door being unlocked, an invisible resistance halted my efforts to open it, as though an intangible presence lingered on the other side, gently obstructing my advance. The brass knocker continued its silent performance, as if engaged in a primordial ritual, oblivious to my presence. Sinking to the floor, I leaned against the cool wall beside the door, allowing myself to be enveloped by the hypnotic cadence of the mysterious beat. Time lost its meaning as I surrendered to the wordless tale woven by the rhythmic sound, my thoughts meandering through misty realms of ancient wisdom and forgotten lore. The beat merged seamlessly with the rhythm of my own breath and heartbeat, lulling me into a trance-like state where reality blurred with dreams. As the first light of dawn filtered into the hallway, painting it in ethereal hues, the knocker fell silent, frozen in time as if it had never moved. Slowly rising, my limbs stiff from hours spent in contemplation, I reached for the handle once more. This time the door yielded without resistance, granting me access to the familiar sanctuary of the library. Every book stood sentinel in its rightful place, the dust suspended in the morning air like motes of forgotten memories. However, upon the antique desk, bathed in the golden rays of sunrise, lay an open book of pristine pages, devoid of ink or inscription, as if poised for the birth of a new narrative. The brass knocker remained still since that haunting night, yet on quiet evenings, a faint echo of its rhythmic melody seemed to reverberate through the house, a poignant reminder of a forgotten tale waiting to be told. Story 27, in the soft glow of a flickering candle, I descended into the depths of the ancient cellar, where shadows danced upon the stone walls. Each step I took echoed through the dimly lit space, a sound that had long been a part of my routine visits to retrieve Grandma's preserves. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and aged wood, transporting me back to simpler times of my youth. Yet on this particular evening, a subtle shift lingered in the air. The candle's flame flickered erratically, defying the stillness of the cellar, and a thin layer of dust coated every surface, despite my recent presence. The shadows seemed to elongate, reaching towards the darkness that beckoned from the bottom of the stairs. I paused, a peculiar feeling washing over me, as if the very essence of the cellar had changed. The wooden shelves, usually finite in length, appeared to stretch endlessly into the shadows. The candlelight faltered, unable to illuminate the farthest reaches, creating an illusion of infinite depth before my eyes. The silence enveloped me, broken only by the rhythmic thud of my heartbeat and the distant drip of water seeping through the stones. Driven by a curiosity that overshadowed my apprehension, I pressed on. The jars of preserves glimmered weakly, their labels bearing dates far older than I had ever seen. 1980, 1960, 1940. Some labels had faded beyond recognition, shrouded in the mists of time. The air grew colder, carrying a musty scent intertwined with the whispers of ancient knowledge. As I ventured deeper, the shelves transformed, the rough stone walls giving way to intricate patterns of ancient bricks. Symbols unknown to me adorned the walls, etched with a precision that defied the era of the cellar's construction. Pausing before a peculiar jar, its dark glass absorbing light instead of reflecting it, I noticed the intact label displaying a bewildering date, 1820. Trembling, I lifted the jar, straining to decipher its enigmatic contents. In the stillness of the cellar, a faint sound reached my ears, a whisper devoid of words, akin to the rustling of time itself. Slowly I turned, catching fleeting glimpses of blurred figures moving in the shadows, like memories yearning to materialize. Sensing a shift in the air, I decided it was time to retreat. However, as I turned towards the stairs, a disconcerting realization dawned upon me. The distance I had traversed had multiplied, the light at the top now a mere glimmer in the vast expanse below. With a deep breath, I began the ascent, each step a deliberate effort to maintain composure. Ascending, I witnessed the shelves morphing once more, returning to their familiar state. The dates on the jars grew more recent, the walls reverting to their original form. Clutching the 1820 jar, a tangible reminder of the surreal experience, I finally emerged into the warm light of the kitchen, a sense of relief washing over me. Placing the jar on the step, I stole a final glance into the depths of the cellar, where shadows played tricks on the mind. That night, sipping on a cup of steaming tea, I pondered the events that had unfolded. The jar now bore a mundane label, Blackberry Jam 2023, yet its aroma carried a hint of something ethereal, a fragrance reminiscent of time itself, ancient and sweet. Since that night, each visit to the cellar has been tinged with a sense of anticipation. The familiar stairs, the usual preserves, all masking the potential for temporal secrets to unfurl. In moments of dim light and profound silence, I feel the cellar's silent invitation, as if it holds the key to unraveling time's mysteries. And perhaps one day I will summon the courage to venture down that endless corridor once more, to unravel the enigma that lies at the nexus where time loses its grasp on reality. Story 28, the rain cascaded down, a serene symphony on the rooftop, serenading the quiet of the night. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a cup of now-cool chamomile tea, I drifted into a trance, captivated by the soothing lullaby of the raindrops. Amidst this tranquil melody, a subtle anomaly pricked my senses, a faint, almost elusive sound intertwined with the rain's gentle percussion, delicate footfalls originating from the depths of the basement. Initially, I brushed it off as the routine settling of the aged abode. Old houses possess their own language, whispering through creaks and murmurs, especially on damp, rainy nights when the wooden structure swells with moisture. Yet this time there was a peculiar cadence to the sounds, a rhythm that mirrored human steps too closely for comfort. Rising languidly from the armchair, I placed the cup on the nearby table. The wooden floor beneath exuded a residual warmth, a faint echo of the day's fading heat. With measured steps, I approached the basement door, the air growing colder with each breath, as if a frosty draft seeped from below. The brass handle chilled my fingertips, and as I turned it, a solitary click reverberated through the silent house. The staircase spiraled into darkness, a dim azure gleam filtering through the skylight, the only source of illumination. Descending cautiously, my own footfalls merged with the enigmatic ones from before. The musty scent of the basement, a blend of aged timber, damp soil, and something indefinable, intensified with each step downward. In the basement's depths, shadows waltzed on the walls with each flicker of lightning. The shelves, laden with ancient relics, cast contorted forms that seemed to sway in harmony with the rain's rhythm. Amidst this eerie dance, a peculiar sight caught my eye. Faint, moisture-laden footprints imprinted the dusty floor, as if a figure with damp soles had meandered in circles at the room's heart. Drawing closer to the prints, I pondered their origin. The skylight remained unscathed, ruling out any water seepage. As I scrutinized these enigmatic traces, a subtle motion in the shadowy corner seized my attention. In that obscure recess where light dared not tread, a presence stirred, languid, and deliberate. My heart quickened not from fear, but from an amalgam of curiosity and a curious sense of recognition. Approaching the darkness, the chill in the air deepened, and the phantom footsteps, now encompassing the entire space, reverberated around me, as though an unseen entity traversed every inch of the room simultaneously. It dawned on me then, the footprints weren't happenstance. They wove a meticulous design, a spiraling path converging toward the room's core. Following this arcane pattern, I discerned the freshest imprints closest to the center, still glistening with moisture as if freshly laid. Stationary, I stood transfixed, watching as these traces dissipated, vanishing into the frigid basement air. The phantom footsteps dwindled, melding seamlessly with the rain's ceaseless cadence outside. Ascending the stairs once more, a peculiar tranquility enveloped me, as though I had borne witness to an ancient, enigmatic ritual ingrained in the house's essence since time immemorial. That night, as I readied for sleep, the rain's patter on the roof adopted a new tenor. No longer mere drops striking at random, it echoed the rhythmic footfalls from the basement. Drifting into slumber, the melodic fusion lingered in my ears, pondering whether the footsteps would return, and if I would summon the courage to unravel the mystery behind those ephemeral imprints in the dust. Story 29, the heavy rain drummed a hypnotic melody on the roof of my old country house, setting the stage for another solitary evening. Serpentine patterns formed as raindrops slid down the window panes, illuminated by the flickering candlelight I had kindled to push back the encroaching darkness. The gentle wind whispered through the garden trees, rustling the leaves in a soothing lullaby. Nestled in my favorite armchair, cradling a steaming cup of tea, I found myself entranced by the delicate spirals of vapor rising into the air. Amidst the familiar sounds of the house, the soft creak of aging wood, the rhythmic ticking of the entryway clock, the whisper of wind sneaking through unseen drafts, an indefinable disturbance began to creep into the tranquility of the evening. It was while I savored my tea that a peculiar sight caught my eye. The upstairs bedroom window, reflected in the hallway mirror, seemed to emit an otherworldly glow, as though a hidden flame flickered within. Yet I knew well that no light source resided in that room. Setting down my cup with care, I rose, drawn towards the staircase by an inexplicable pull. Each groan of the wooden steps, though a sound I had grown accustomed to over years of residence, now carried a different weight, as if the very house sought to convey a message to me. The air turned chillier as I ascended, a thin veil of moisture clinging to the walls of the upper hallway. Pausing before the bedroom door, I hesitated, feeling the icy touch of the brass handle against my palm. With a slight squeak, the door swung open, revealing the room cloaked in shadows. The window, the same one I had glimpsed in the mirror, remained shut. Yet, to my astonishment, the lock began to shift of its own accord, inching open without any visible force guiding it. As the window gradually slid ajar, the rain-laden breeze carried with it a sweet, ancient fragrance, redolent of dried flowers and aged wood. Intrigued, I approached, observing raindrops pirouetting into the room, forming intricate patterns before alighting on the wooden sill. But the true marvel lay in their movement, not a mere descent, but a dance suspended in midair, as if defying gravity. And then a ghostly script materialized on the fogged glass, as if an unseen hand inscribed cryptic messages. Straining my eyes, I tried to decipher the blurred words, my heart quickening its tempo. The curtains stirred gently, mimicking the rhythmic breaths of a slumbering being, though no draft stirred the air. Shadows danced across the walls, woven by the moonlight filtering through rain-laden clouds, weaving silent narratives that only the night could comprehend. Tentatively, I extended a hand towards the glass, feeling the cool breath of the outside world caress my fingertips. Just as my skin grazed the surface, the window closed with a deliberate slowness, the latch clicking softly into place, dispersing the lingering scent of antiquity. For moments that stretched into eternity, I stood transfixed, enveloped by the persistent patter of rain outside. The room had reverted to its familiar state, yet an intangible shift had occurred. It was as if the house itself had sought to unveil a fragment of a parallel realm, glimpsed only in those ephemeral instants when reality and enigma converged like gossamer threads. Since that enigmatic night, whenever rain falls, I find myself ensconced in my armchair, watching the bedroom window's reflection in the hallway mirror. Sometimes it remains inert, a silent sentinel. Other times it unfurls slowly, in a ritual as ancient as time itself, now woven into the tapestry of my existence. The origin of this spectral occurrence remains shrouded in mystery, a secret shared solely between myself and these time-worn walls. And on the stillest of nights, when the wind murmurs through the trees and the rain whispers its ancient song, I sense a presence, ephemeral yet comforting, a spectral guardian watching over me from beyond the threshold of perception. Through the window that opens of its own accord, this unseen companion chooses to manifest, a silent witness to the symbiosis between this earthly realm and the ethereal unknown. Story 30, night had draped the ancient countryside house in a cloak of profound serenity. Nestled in my cherished armchair beside the crackling fireplace, I observed the shadows dance on the walls while the flames leisurely devoured the logs. The warmth enveloped me like a cozy embrace, while outside the autumn breeze tenderly brushed against the tree leaves. In that moment of utter tranquility, a peculiar sound caught my attention. A crystalline, childlike laughter drifting from the upper floor of the house. A laughter akin to silver bells. Pausing to listen, I allowed the sound to intertwine with the fire's crackling symphony. There was an innocence to it, a joyous laughter that seemed almost melodic. However, having lived solitary in this house for over 2 decades, I had never welcomed children within its walls. Curiosity began to stir within me like a gentle stream, gradually dispelling the drowsiness that had nearly overtaken me. Rising from the armchair with deliberate movements, I savored the sensation as my feet met the worn Persian rug. The floorboards whispered softly under my weight as I made my way towards the staircase. The glow of the candles flickering in the living room cast a warm and inviting glow, casting my silhouette on the walls in a silent, rhythmic dance. Ascending the stairs, I noticed the air growing cooler with each step. It wasn't a harsh chill, but rather a delicate caress on the skin, reminiscent of the breeze near the ocean. The laughter echoed once more, closer this time, emanating from the guest room. A room seldom used, adorned with antique furniture draped in white linens that swayed gently as if moved by an unseen hand. The door to the room stood slightly ajar, allowing a silvery light to filter through, unlike any other light in the house. Not moonlight, too warm for that, nor the glow of electric lamps. It was a light of its own, pulsating gently like a quiet heartbeat. Pushing the door open, the ancient wood sang a familiar tune. The room unfolded before me, bathed in that ethereal luminescence. The draped furniture formed soft, comforting shapes, resembling clouds in a serene sky. And there, perched on the windowsill, I beheld a sight that stole my breath away. Not a distinct figure, but a play of light and shadow that seemed to mimic a child's form. The laughter echoed once more, unmistakably originating from that radiant presence. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of awe. The light child toyed with the rays it emitted, painting luminous patterns on the walls as if crafting with light itself. Drawing closer, I felt the room's temperature shift gently between cool and warm, like waves lapping at the shore. As I neared, a familiarity dawned upon me. In its fluid movements, I recognized echoes of my own childhood play. A realization washed over me with the sweetness of a forgotten memory. That crystalline, pure laughter was my own laughter from childhood. Time seemed to stretch as I observed that surreal display. The light child continued its silent play, punctuated by that melodious laughter that now reverberated like a whisper from the past. I dared not disrupt the tranquility, refraining from speech or interaction, lest I shatter the spell of peace and nostalgia. Gradually, the silvery light began to wane, akin to the sun setting on a winter evening. The child's form grew increasingly translucent until only a faint glow lingered. The final laughter I heard was a gentle murmur, a tender farewell before fading into darkness completely. I lingered in the room for what felt like an eternity, enveloped in a serene hush. The draped furniture stilled, and the air returned to its usual temperature, yet something had shifted. The guest room, once a repository of dusty memories, now held a precious enigma. Retreating to my armchair by the fireplace, the flames casting a soft glow, I comprehended that I would never unravel the mystery of that night. Was it a reverie, a reminiscence, or perchance something deeper, a message from the past manifested through a child's laughter in the shadows? Since that fateful night, whenever I pass by the guest room, I pause, attuning my ears to the silence. On the stillest nights, a faint echo of that crystalline laughter seems to reach me, a gentle lullaby guiding me towards slumber. And with a smile, I allow the enigma to endure, a sweet secret shared between myself and the child who laughs in the darkness. Story 31. The night had enveloped the aged house in a velvety shroud of stillness, broken only by the soft patter of autumn rain on the window panes. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a warm cup of tea in my hands, I absent-mindedly gazed at the painting hanging on the wall opposite me. An heirloom from my grandmother, it depicted a forest scene at sundown. Though not a valuable piece, it always drew me in with its ability to conjure a sense of wistful tranquility. That night, as the golden glow of the floor lamp cast flickering shadows around the room, a peculiar sight caught my eye. The painting appeared slightly askew to the right, though I could have sworn it had always hung perfectly straight. Setting down my cup on the nearby table, I rose slowly, the old wooden floor murmuring beneath my footsteps as I approached the wall. With a delicate touch, I adjusted the painting, feeling the rough texture of the antique frame beneath my fingertips. Settling back into my chair, I returned to the book I had momentarily abandoned. The warmth of the tea and the soothing rhythm of the rain outside lulled me into a contented drowsiness. It was only after some time that I glanced up and saw the painting askew once more, this time to the left. A subtle shiver traced down my spine as I tried to convince myself it was a trick of fatigue or a play of light and shadow. Rising again, more cautiously this time, I approached the painting and noticed something peculiar. The colors of the sunset seemed more vibrant, almost pulsating, and the tree shadows appeared longer than before. With trembling fingers, I touched the canvas surface, finding it warm as if it had absorbed the room's heat. Yet there was something different about the way the paint shimmered in the light. In the days that followed, I found myself becoming increasingly attuned to the painting. Each time I entered the room, it seemed to have shifted ever so slightly. Sometimes the change was barely perceptible, other times it was more pronounced. Not only did its tilt vary, but the details within the painting itself seemed to subtly alter. The density of the trees varied, the clouds in the painted sky took on new formations. I began to document these changes by photographing the painting each morning and evening, meticulously comparing the images. The discrepancies, though slight, were undeniable. Within the painted forest, subtle elements emerged and vanished. A bird's nest among the branches, a hidden glade, a faint pathway that hadn't been there before. The sunset appeared to shift imperceptibly, as if time within the painting flowed to a different cadence than our own. On a particularly serene evening, while settled in my customary armchair, a movement caught my peripheral vision. The painting was tilting on its own, moving with a nearly imperceptible slowness. Rather than fear, a profound curiosity mingled with a surreal tranquility filled me. The motion was fluid, as though an unseen hand was tenderly caressing it. I approached the painting once more, this time without hesitation. The canvas surface seemed to quiver slightly under my gaze. In the glass reflection protecting the artwork, for a fleeting moment, I thought I glimpsed a familiar figure. The blurred profile of my grandmother, ethereal and fleeting like a distant memory, appeared to smile as she adjusted the painting to its proper alignment. Since that moment, I've embraced these subtle shifts as part of the house's enchantment. Each evening, before retiring to bed, I devote a few moments to studying the painting, eager to uncover its new mysteries. At times, it feels as though my grandmother is conveying her presence, watching over me through this enigmatic canvas that breathes and moves like a living entity. This tale remains mine alone, a cherished mystery nestled in my heart. The painting continues its dance of change, though now it does so less frequently, as if it has found equilibrium between revealing itself and preserving its enigma. And so I sit in my armchair each evening, savoring a steaming cup of tea, the rain's gentle cadence on the windows, and the painting that lives its own story, engaging in a silent dialogue that only we share. Story 32. Night draped the house in its hushed embrace as the wind murmured softly through the leaves of the ancient tree in the garden. Nestled in the cozy armchair of my bedroom, I observed the shadows waltzing on the walls in the flickering lamplight. It was the time when slumber typically beckoned, yet a peculiar resistance lingered within me, defying the grasp of Morpheus. The cause was clear. For weeks on end, a recurring dream had woven its intricate tapestry with unwavering precision. The room's warmth and the rhythmic cadence of the old pendulum clock acted as gentle lullabies. My gaze drifted to the open diary on the desk, where I meticulously chronicled every nuance of that haunting dream. The pages brimmed with my orderly script, narrating the same sequence of occurrences unfailingly. A spiraling staircase of gray stone descending into the abyss, the distant melody of water droplets, and a grand wooden door adorned with enigmatic symbols. As I perused the diary entries, a detail caught my eye, previously overlooked. In each rendition of the dream, the chills seemed to intensify gradually as I descended the stairs. My fingertips grazed the frigid stone, my breath materializing in the air as wisps of vapor. Yet what set this dream apart was the inexplicable sense of recognition that accompanied me throughout the Odyssey, as though the staircase led to a place known to me intimately, despite never setting foot there in reality. The door at the staircase's base remained shut, but every night I inched closer to deciphering the intricately carved symbols adorning it. They were fluid shapes that seemed to shift under my scrutiny, almost as if they pulsed with life. In the dream, my touch traced the contours of those mystifying symbols, and each time a subtle vibration rippled through the wood as if the door itself drew breath. That night, as I readied for bed, a peculiar object caught my attention in the room. Nestled on the nightstand beside the lamp was a small item I could not recall ever seeing before. An ancient bronze key, its ornate designs oddly reminiscent of the symbols on the dream door. Picking it up, I was struck by its weight and the icy chill it exuded. Though I could not recollect its origin, its presence felt eerily natural, as though it had always been a part of my existence. Nestled beneath the covers, I clutched the key firmly in my palm. Its solidness reassured me of its tangible reality, distinct from the ephemeral realm of dreams. Succumbing to slumber, I sensed a shift in the air, a premonition that this night would diverge from the usual course. The dream unfurled as expected, the spiraling staircase, the melodic drip of water, the gradual descent into frostbitten air. However, this time, as I approached the door, the key in my grasp pulsed faintly, resonating with the engraved symbols. Bringing the key to the lock hidden among the carvings, my heart drummed a steady rhythm as I inserted it. The mechanism yielded with a soft, melodious click, akin to a long-forgotten tune. The door creaked open slowly, revealing not another chamber, but a mirror reflecting the staircase behind me. In the mirror's reflection, the steps ascended instead of descended. Startled awake in my room, the soft light of dawn filtering through the curtains, the key still nestled in my palm, now radiating a gentle warmth, almost pulsating with life. On the desk, the diary lay open, a new page filled with characters unfamiliar to me, akin to the symbols on the dream door, their forms undulating like waves on an ink-black sea. Since that fateful night, the dream has not revisited me. The key rests serenely on my nightstand, occasionally emitting a faint vibration on quiet evenings. I often ponder what awaits at the summit of that reflected staircase and whether someday I will summon the courage to ascend it. For now, I find solace in observing the symbols within the diary, their dance unfolding in the darkest hours of the night, weaving a tale perhaps beyond my current comprehension. Story 33. The rain softly tapped against the windows of my vintage farmhouse, playing a soothing tune that harmonized with the gentle creaking of the wooden floor beneath me. It was an autumn evening when reality and fantasy intertwined seamlessly, blurring the edges of perception. Outside, the leaves swayed in a mysterious dance, casting elusive shadows on the hallway walls bathed in a soft, creamy hue. Nestled in my favorite armchair, cradling a cup of chamomile tea now cooled, I found myself entranced by the golden halo cast by the floor lamp's light. A subtle shift in the atmosphere lingered that evening, a persistent feeling that eluded my attempts at identification. The air held a thickness, the silence of the house almost palpable. Rising slowly, I followed a flicker of movement caught in my peripheral vision. The hallway leading to the bedrooms appeared elongated, as if stretching beyond its usual boundaries. Shadows loomed in the corners, dense and alive, drawing me further into their depths. Crossing the threshold into the living room, I peered into the deepening darkness ahead. The temperature dropped gradually, the floor beneath me emitting unfamiliar sounds as if whispering secrets of the past. The family portraits adorning the walls bore witness to my journey, their gazes transformed into something otherworldly. Halting midway down the hallway, a peculiar scent wafted to my nostrils, an ancient fragrance of aged books and damp wood foreign to my home. Turning towards the window, rain had painted intricate patterns on the glass, a cryptic language only nature could decipher, and then it revealed itself. A shadow, darker than the rest, moved gracefully along the opposite wall, defying logic and reason. Unbound by any physical form, the shadow moved with a delicate elegance, acknowledging my presence with a subtle awareness. My breath deepened, a sense of recognition washing over me instead of fear. It felt as though this presence had always lingered, waiting to be acknowledged. The shadow paused by the guest room door, assuming a faintly human shape. Taking a step closer, I noticed a slight tremor in its form as if responding to my proximity. The rain's whispers now formed a constant murmur, a language of the unknown that teased comprehension. The air grew colder, a refreshing chill that enveloped me like a silken embrace on a balmy summer night. The shadow resumed its ethereal dance, moving towards me with a fluidity that mesmerized. I stood still, a silent observer as it drew nearer. Just a few steps away, it halted. In the hush of the house, my heartbeat resonated, steady and calm. The shadow inclined slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. Moved by an inexplicable impulse, I raised my hand. Mirroring my action, the shadow extended a hand-like appendage, and a warmth radiated where our hands almost touched. With a grace reminiscent of a fading dream, the shadow began to dissipate, dispersing like smoke carried by an unseen current. In its wake lingered a faint scent of jasmine and a profound sense of tranquility. I lingered in the hallway, time suspended in the aftermath of the encounter, as the rain's melody waned. Returning to the living room, I found my tea still warm, a testament to the timeless moment spent in the presence of the enigmatic shadow. Since that evening on rainy nights, I tread the hallway with heightened awareness, seeking glimpses of that familiar form dancing at the edge of sight. The mystery of the shadow remains unsolved, yet its essence left behind a feeling of peace and acceptance. The hallway now guards its secret, a silent sentinel in the night where raindrops play a symphony against the windows. And in those quiet moments, I await with a blend of curiosity and serenity for the shadow to dance once more beyond the hallway's threshold. Story 34. The autumn mist draped the streets in a soft, gray embrace, casting a veil of mystery over the city. It was late, and exhaustion weighed heavy on my shoulders as I navigated the familiar route home. Through the haze, a pair of headlights caught my attention, trailing behind me like a silent sentinel. There was something peculiar about the way they mirrored my every move, a subtle unease creeping into my thoughts. The car behind me seemed to move in harmony with my own, a ghostly presence in the night. Its steady hum blended with the rhythm of my journey, a constant companion in the shadows. As I slowed, it slowed. When I quickened my pace, it did the same. The headlights, like twin orbs, pierced through the mist, unwavering in their gaze upon me. The residential streets lay quiet and still, the only sound the patter of rain on the windshield, a soothing backdrop to the strange dance unfolding behind me. Curiosity mingled with apprehension as I veered off my usual path, testing the limits of this eerie pursuit. Yet the car followed, a specter in the night that refused to be shaken. Turn after turn, street after street, the car maintained its distance, a silent companion in the darkness. Raindrops traced intricate patterns on the windows, distorting the view of the persistent follower. I felt a shiver of dread run down my spine, an inexplicable tension hanging in the air. At a red light, I stole a glance through the rain-streaked glass, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a figure in the driver's seat, unmoving and inscrutable. A chill ran through me, but before I could make sense of it, the light changed, and I continued on my way. Finally reaching home, I parked in the driveway, the rain a gentle patter on the roof of my car. The stillness of the night enveloped me, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Through the rearview mirror, I watched as the car behind me came to a halt, its headlights piercing the darkness like beacons. Minutes ticked by, each one stretching into eternity, until with a soft click, the headlights dimmed and darkness reclaimed the street. I held my breath, anticipation hanging heavy in the air. Stepping out into the rain, I turned to face the spot where the car had lingered, but there was nothing there, just an empty street swallowed by the night. Since that eerie night, a sense of unease lingers whenever I drive through the mist-shrouded streets after dark. Sometimes in the thick fog, I catch a glimpse of those familiar headlights in the distance, a silent reminder of that mysterious encounter. I wonder if the car still prowls the night, its silent vigil unbroken, or if it waits, biding its time for another nocturnal rendezvous through the city's shadowed alleys. Story 35. In the hush of night, a delicate mist twirled like a ghostly waltz through the air. Nestled in my cherished armchair, the rich burgundy velvet one beside the grand antique mirror, I delved into the pages of a book under the gentle glow of a vintage lamp. The rhythmic ticking of the pendulum clock filled the room with a mesmerizing cadence, while the crackling warmth of the fireplace wrapped me in a snug cocoon. Amid this oasis of serenity, a peculiar sensation stirred within me. At first, it was a mere flicker, akin to catching a glimpse of movement in the periphery. I lifted my gaze from the book and beheld my reflection in the ancient mirror. The ornate golden frame, adorned with intricate floral motifs, shimmered faintly in the flickering firelight. As I studied my mirrored self, a subtle chill traced down my spine. An imperceptible dissonance lingered in the air, a discordance I couldn't quite grasp. With a slight tilt of my head, I noticed a curious delay in my reflection's response, as if it strived to mimic rather than mirror my movements organically. I dismissed it as fatigue or the capricious interplay of shadows cast by the dancing flames. Yet the disquiet grew as I continued to scrutinize the reflection before me. When I raised my right hand, the mirrored image hesitated fractionally before replicating the gesture. A ghost of a smile lingered on its lips, trailing my own expression with a subtle lag. The fireplace's crackling now held a sinister undertone, as though whispering cryptic messages. The room's atmosphere thickened, pregnant with an unspoken tension that slowed my breath. The scent of candle wax intermingled with an ancient aroma, redolent of forgotten tomes and faded memories. With deliberate languor, I rose from the armchair, each movement deliberate. My reflection mimicked me, its motions unnaturally fluid, as if choreographed rather than spontaneous. Its eyes held a depth beyond mine, concealing enigmatic truths. Drawing nearer to the mirror, I discerned further anomalies. The reflected room bore subtle discrepancies from my own, a rearrangement of books, unfamiliar objects. An old photograph, once depicting a serene seascape, now blurred into a haunting visage fixated on me. The pendulum's swing persisted, yet in the reflection, time ebbed languidly, as though existing in a realm apart. Shadows cast by the fireplace cavorted on the walls, weaving spectral shapes hinting at silent observers. When I dared touch the cold mirror's surface, my reflection extended an almost beckoning hand. Our fingertips met on the frigid glass, my skin registering the chill while its visage betrayed a different sensation. Retreating from the mirror, I watched as my reflection hesitated, as if contemplating whether to follow my lead. When it finally moved, its actions diverged further from mine, as if asserting its own autonomy. Retrieving an old velvet cloth, I veiled the mirror, concealing that disquieting doppelganger of mine. Since that fateful night, the mirror remains shrouded. Yet in the quietest hours, faint echoes hint at an unseen presence beyond the velvet veil, as if a parallel existence unfolds in tandem with mine. And in the profound stillness of the house, I ponder whether that reflection lingers, a silent specter inhabiting a world of glass and silver. The truth eludes me, whether reality or figment of imagination. Each encounter with a mirror now prompts a silent query. Is the reflection truly mine, or a masterful mimicry that blurs the line between truth and illusion?